Hello.
It stops so
I was totally going to sit there and wait for you to notice. Good evening, everybody. That video ends really quickly. I need to get
It
a longer
does.
fade out to give us a
Yeah,
little bit of time to prep.
I think so. Just so I can answer my WhatsApps without getting caught out.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome again to another Blether. Great to have you along. That was great. Thank you, Dave.
It is good, isn't it? I like that. I like seeing all our past Blether guests. It's fun.
I've got a lot more your routine now. If you notice, everyone gets half a second each.
Okay.
I don't know, by the end of the year, we're going to have to squeeze everyone in. It's going to be crazy.
I think we need to do the generation game, because each week I'm starting to spot more people I didn't spot the week before. So we should look at a quiz at the end. Who did you see?
Who did you see? We should throw in somebody who we haven't had and see if people can guess.
Somebody really random, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and see if anybody notices. I don't remember him being on.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to John, Scott. We've got Dave watching. Dave's on call, so he's off the booze. Probably still got a bit of Christmas cake there, though.
He finished it last week, didn't he?
Oh, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, a week's a long time. You could get a new one. Tim Powell's is in. He's saying evening, Blethering, Kat, Mike, and Iain. Hope you're all well. Should be interesting tonight. I always feel I should explore more Glen Moray. We all need a little bit more Glen Moray in our life, I think. I'm just highlighting the fact that Dave is not having alcohol. I think you should have us on YouTube. The Blethering. Is that what you mean, Dave? We get our guests on, get our viewers on as guests. That'd be cool.
Well, do you know what we could do for the end of the season? You can make a little video and it's all the guests. So instead of all the not the guests, all the Blether and all the viewers, do a montage of they all send a little picture, and we could do a montage of all the viewers for the last one of the year as a wee.
We need to know what all these guys look like anyway, because we're going to be visiting festivals soon and meeting them at festivals. So we need to know what you look like.
It's funny though, and I love it when people come up and say, "Oh my God, Kat!" You're like, "Yes." They're like, "Oh, I watch you on the Blether." I'm like, "Oh my God, that's really cool." Do we decide?
You always reply in that kind of sultry tone when people say your name.
Yes. Can you believe I'm single as well?
Oh dear. Scott is having some Craigellachie 13, kind of classic Speysider. Love Craigellachie's. So one of these, because it probably doesn't have a prominent core range that we don't speak about a lot, but it's a banging draft.
Do you know it's one I haven't actually tried, and it's on my to-do list, because everyone talks about it being kind of heavy, sulfury, funky kind of, and I haven't really done many drams like that, so I do need to. But you don't see on shop shelves very often. It's other than in your shop, I haven't really seen it.
Yeah, even then, we've only got the 13-year-old. We don't have any. But we're not here to talk about Craigellachie, are we? We're here to talk Glen Moray, and we'll get a guest on, Iain, who has hopefully got a wee dram poured for him. And let's go. There we go. Good evening.
Hello.
Evening. How are we?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Okay, I'm kind of getting over the lurgy, so I'm interested to see how all the cold and flu relief mixes with cast strength Glen Moray, because it's not a combination I've tried before. So if it gets a bit like a fever dream by the end of this, we'll blame the drugs and alcohol.
Either cure you or kill you. We've never had that in the Blether. It'll be fine. It'll be all good. It'll be good. So that you obviously led us into your dram for tonight. So what have we got?
Yeah, I've actually lined up 3 because I'm expecting that we could be here chatting for a little while. So I thought I would start with Glen Moray 12. Let's go with classic, old school Glen Moray in its new fancy packaging as well.
I was going to say that look, do you know, when I was carrying the bottles upstairs this evening, I thought it's been a while since I've seen Glen Moray do a rebrand.
It has.
So, there we go.
Yeah, well, we did it in 2 stages, bizarrely. I'm not sure what. Well, the thinking was probably our hardworking marketing team didn't want to do the full collection in 1 year, so we rebranded our Explorer range, which is our entry-level non-age statement, ones that most people see in the supermarkets. That was rebranded last year, and we focused on kind of launching and promoting and pushing all things Explorer range. Now we're on to this year, our Heritage range, so our age collection, 12, 15, 18 and 21 should be hitting the shelves pretty much as we speak. It was launched at the start of the year, so tail end of last year, start of this year. So it's just filtering through as we speak.
Fab.
Have you got a bird in your room, Kat?
No, I'm sorry. I haven't put my phone on silent. I've just realised it's right next to the laptop. So yeah, I'm sorry. Wait, I'll put it on silent.
So I'm just saying, Bob has popped in. He's having a Campbelltown Loch for a starter tonight, and then he's going on to the Wee Brown Electric Coup for Maine. Bob, you'll be pleased to hear that Dave Sturck, the coup side of that, is watching tonight. He's on Facebook. Good evening, David. He is looking for a Wayne's World gift of "We Are Not Worthy." I think that's for yourself, Iain.
I've not seen Dave's wonderful baldy napper in a few months, so it'll be good to catch up with him sometime soon. So I hope you're keeping well, Dave.
Wonderful baldy napper. I love it. You're gonna have to get that in a T-shirt, Dave. That'd be great.
Yeah. That should be his new release. Never mind this Electric 2 nonsense. The baldy napper.
The baldy napper.
That's the one we're waiting on.
Oh, do you know that should be a thing though? The baldy napper.
That's an independent name, isn't it? Independent bottling name, the baldy napper.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a concentrated audience there straight away, don't you? Yeah. Anyone who's bald will lap that up.
Do you know?
It says me, who's pretty much mostly on the way to that.
Oh, yeah. I'm very much in the same boat. So
yeah, it's very much a club, a gentleman's club, I think.
Well, I'm not joining, unfortunately, but well, not unfortunately. I don't want to be bald, but not that there's anything wrong with being bald, obviously, guys. You know, nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just digging myself into a hole there.
I'd like to just take this moment to apologise to all the bald guys at home on behalf of Kat's offensive and inappropriate comments there.
I was going to say something else. I'm just not going to because I'm just going to dig myself into a bigger hole.
So moving swiftly on, I've gone Glen Moray as well on brand. This is the fully matured Oloroso, which we had at the tasting late in the year last year. With yourself.
You've started big. You've jumped straight into the deep end.
I didn't realise just how, but all three of my drams, I've got this one, I've got the rum cask, which is 60%, and then I've got a shop exclusive that we've done, which is 59.5%. So, yeah.
Wow.
I won't be pouring big measures, I don't think, tonight.
Yeah, I've started on the 40%, so I've kept it nice and sensible to open, and we'll see. We've got a couple of cast strengths sitting behind the screen, which we can move on to later on, I suppose.
That's a pretty funky cabinet as well behind you there. Some nice Glen Morays in that. Are you at home or are you?
I at home, yeah. So we just moved into a new house a few months ago, so we're in the process. So this is the lovely old couple that we bought the house from. This is still their decor and their furniture, which we're in the process of. I'm trying to be not
getting rid of.
Yeah, let's go modernising. Let's go with that. So yes, we're mid decor. So.
Did that cabinet have Royal Doulton ladies in it before you put whiskey in it?
I think it might have done. I think it had some kind of funky kind of things in it. So yeah, I've gone with whiskey. You've got to think. I'd kind of forgotten about the backdrop, that thing that we had during lockdown when every tasting was online, and you had to consider your backdrop and everything else. Because I remember I used to have it in my spare room in the house we were in previous to this. And everybody thought I was in a cupboard, but it was our spare room. So I couldn't quite get the angles right that made me look like I wasn't trapped in a cupboard.
Well, for a long time, every week, people used to slag off my whiskey shelf behind me because it was literally an old shoe rack that had like 3 bottles of whiskey precariously balanced on it. So I've finally all the whiskey was on the floor. You just couldn't see it. So I finally got a new whiskey shelf. Avoided the slagging every week.
Yeah, we all picked the highbrow books to leave on the shelf and take down the slightly less highbrow books that we were maybe reading at the time.
Well, I don't know. My top shelf's all full of Ladybird books because I collect vintage Ladybird books. So it's not very highbrow, but it just shows the mentality of me that I have Ladybird books and a stuffed mole next to my whiskey. So, all to their own.
Yeah,
I haven't done my whiskey yet. I need to do my whiskey. I'm on brand 2. Oh. There we go. So I've got.
And now, have you opened this?
I meant to do it before we went live, so I'm probably not going to do it now. But it's a port one, and I got it when I went to go and visit Cornelia. But I was reading about the brands you guys have, and then I was in Asda today, and this was on special offer. This is you guys, right?
Yes, that is us. Hey, well, actually, is that the bourbon barrel?
Yes.
Okay,
so not you guys.
The brand is owned by the same company, but the bourbon barrel, it's not a blend, that's a single grain. So that's from our company's grain distillery down in Bathgate, Starlaw. So
that's cool.
I can say this out loud because I've said it to the sales and marketing team. When we launched that one a few years ago now, I think it was just after COVID, we launched that. They decided that the interesting feature of that one was that it was in bourbon barrel, not the fact. It was the first ever new bottling of a single grain from the newest single grain distillery built in Scotland since the 1960s. So it's quite a funky, interesting whiskey and dram to get your hands on if you're a big whiskey enthusiast, because it's an opportunity to try for the first time Starlaw single grain as a bottling rather than Label 5, which is typically a blend.
Well, go to Asda because it's on special offer. So go and find it.
How much is it? Just out of interest, how much is it in Asda?
It was like £19 something. It was really cheap.
Yeah, it's a great price. It's it's all first fill bourbon casks, single grain. It's about 4 or 5 years old, so it's not too old, but it's just got a lovely kind of nice, sweet, easygoing nature to it. So good dram.
I'm gonna start with that one, and then while you guys are all distracted, I will try and remember how to open that wooden box that I've got my Glen Moray in.
Magnet in the top, it pulls apart.
I figured that out the hard way trying to get into it live in front of Cornelia on a Blether one night, and I just couldn't get into it at all.
We've had people phone the distillery after buying those bottles going, we bought one of these boxes. How do we get into the whiskey?
That was just about me, but I was like, I must have put it in that box when I did it in the shop, but I don't remember putting it in the box, but couldn't get it back out of the box. So yeah.
So Iain, how did the whiskey journey start for you? You're a Speysider, aren't you? You grew up in Elgin?
Yeah, born and brought up in Elgin. So I came back here. The whiskey journey, I suppose, started long before I got a job in it. Fell in love with whiskey. Probably younger than you're meant to, but my dad was a big single malt drinker, so it was always around the house, and being born in Speyside, you're never too far away from a distillery. In fact, I remember we had a school trip to Glenfiddich at one point. Went to university through in Aberdeen. Got a part-time job in Thresher's Wines and Spirits store. I don't know if you remember, there was a Thresher's next to John Lewis on George Street. So that was my Saturday job out with uni, and decided that the spirits side is way more fun than the wine side. Graduated, didn't know what I wanted to do. Became a shop manager and then area manager for Threshers. So overseeing a few different Victoria wines, Haddos, Threshers in the Aberdeen area. And then a job came up at Macallan back in 2001. So I jumped back into Speyside, got a job as the visitor centre manager at Macallan Distillery for 4 years, so from 2001 to 2005. And then somebody gave me a phone call. An old colleague who'd moved from Edrington phoned me up and says, we've got a job at Glen Moray if you're interested. And I was like, oh, I'm quite happy at Macallan. I'm good, thank you. And he said, no, just come and speak to us. So I did, and it'll be 20 years later come August, still at Glen Moray.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, best jump I ever made. Yeah, I love it. It's been a fantastic journey, great brand. Love what they've been doing at the distillery for the brand. Change of ownership midway through, well, not midway through, in the early part, because when I first joined, it was Glenmorangie. So I was there with Glenmorangie for 3 years. It was 2005 to 2008, and then we were bought by La Martiniquez, the company that has Label 5. They had Label 5 as the blend to begin with, and we kind of thought that Glen Moray would disappear because Label 5's huge. Label 5 is the 9th biggest selling Scotch whisky in the world. And they didn't have a single malt distillery. And kind of all of us from the outside looking in the deal thought that, yeah, we're just going to become a workhorse distillery producing for Label 5 as a blend. But what we didn't realize was that their plan was very much to invest in the distillery, to expand the distillery, increase capacity, so that we could have that kind of two-stream approach, because we still have to manage and look after our company blends. But the single malt was very, very much a big part of their picture and what they wanted to do with it. So.
Exciting stuff. Yeah, so the fifth, Label 5, the 5th biggest blend, or
ninth biggest selling Scotch whisky in the world. The last presentation I saw. So it's huge. It's a volume. It's a volume blend.
Yeah. And what kind of markets is that predominantly?
Mainly European, France being the biggest. France is a big consumer. It's a French company. It was a blend produced for the French market, and it's kind of grown out with there. So available in Asda in the UK, as you can see. We sponsored Livingston Football Club to get onto the football chat nice and early. A shirt sponsor for Livingston. We've actually sponsored 2 football clubs with Label 5, and both of them got relegated. So I'm not sure we're a very popular sponsor.
It's not related.
I'm pretty sure it's not related. So in the UK, small market for Label 5, but we're starting to get it out into different markets around the world. So
that's awesome. Yeah, because like your 9th biggest one. And you see blends on the shelves all the time, but it's one that hadn't really stuck out to me until I'd read about, obviously, this is research for you coming on tonight, and then literally just decided to walk down the booze aisle towards the checkout, and I'd spotted it. So I don't know, maybe it just wasn't in my conscious, but like if it's bigger in Europe, I guess maybe it's just not been as big in the UK until recently, I think, potentially.
Yeah, it's not been around the UK too long. It's only been the last few years that we've introduced it to the UK. Very, very much a European brand. So if you're doing your shopping in France, it's one you'll see often and pretty much everywhere, to be honest.
I guess the UK blend market is kind of ruled by a couple of biggies. Your White Mackay, Grouse, and Bells are probably Isle of Skye maybe would be in there. So it'd be tough to. Certainly, kind of, I'm thinking kind of bar exposure, back bar. It'd be tough to get into that market because of those kind of 5 or 6 who rule every optic in the bar.
Yeah, I actually don't know. I would need to speak to the sales guys. I don't know if we do any on-trade. We've got an on-trade sales team, so they'll have it on their books, but I'm not sure what kind of visibility or what kind of stretch it's got in the UK from an on-trade point of view. But it's a lot like what we do with Glen Moray, what we do with a lot of our brands. The owner's ethos is very much, good quality at a good price. We don't, have huge marketing budgets. The marketing for most of our products are, get it out there. And I hate this phrase a lot, but we use it, and that's liquor to lips. Get people to taste it, get it out there, and the price will help to sell it. That's, and the taste and the quality as well. So.
Yeah. Do I think that sums up Glen Moray is perfect though, isn't it? It's like, it's it's always such a reasonable price, but it's always really good quality. Because sometimes I think it's almost like your burden, because it's such a good price and you can see it in supermarkets. People automatically think, oh well, it's maybe not that good then, but it's like it's obviously a very, very good whiskey, and you do some fantastic cask finishes and some really fun expressions. It's all affordable, so I mean. Yeah, what's not to like about that?
It's funny. It is a double-edged sword. You know, so many people will come to us having discovered us because we were their first step on the ladder of single malt whiskey, because maybe they were young, they were students, or they didn't have a huge amount of disposable income when they started on or didn't want to spend a lot of money on a bottle when they started on their journey. So we were their first port of call. So, and you know, we generally find a lot of people have discovered us from that direction. But I also find a lot of people say that they never touched us because we were cheap. So it's kind of funny. It's weird. Some people will find you, some will avoid you. Last year, for a few weeks, we were the number one selling single malt in the UK. So I think more people have decided that, you know, they'd rather, you know, find us in that way than avoid us, which is good. But we get asked, why are we so cheap, you know, for want of a better word. And I always say, well, why is everybody else so expensive? It's a single malt Scotch whiskey. We all follow the same strict rules and regulations. We can't cut corners. We're not doing something that somebody else isn't doing. Oh, well, okay, we don't peat all the time, but you know what I mean? There's no major shortcut for us to save money and make it a cheaper product. It was very much a brand decision. And even prior to current owners, when we were with Glenmorangie, how they segregated Glen Moray from Glenmorangie was from price point. They're like, well, Glenmorangie is the more premium brand from a price perspective, and Glen Moray is more the entry level from a price perspective. But that wasn't at the time, wasn't a consideration on the quality of the liquid. It was very much about keeping the two brands very separate from a kind of, you know, similar profile to some extent, you know, kind of lighter, sweeter single malt whiskies is what they had in their portfolio. So an easy way to keep them different.
Yeah.
I guess you've got the volume as well, because you're producing quite a lot, but so I guess with volume you can keep the price lower as well. It's about 8 million. Is it 8 million litres you're producing annually? Like roughly?
Yeah, we just completed our third expansion in the last 12 years. So that took us from 6 to 8.5 million.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's one of the big changes. You know, when we were owned by Glenmorangie, and when we were just focused on what we were doing at the time, but to bring the product to such a big blend along with single malt, it did need investment in the capacity. So it was 2.2 million litres, and that was 24/7 production back then. 2012, we took it up to 3.3. 2016, we took it up to 6. And then in 2024, we took it up to 8.5. So it's been a kind of nice, steady progression to build it up to the capacity we're sitting at now that gives us the volume to do the kind of things we're doing. So.
Yeah, I went over to visit the distillery just after Cornelli had come over to you guys. Maybe like, it wasn't last year, like year before. And you were just kind of in the middle of that expansion. But yeah, just, I don't know, when you see photographs of Glen Moray, you see the beautiful little house. Then it's almost like, you know, like in Shrek when they go to visit like the fairy godmother, and she's got the little wee cottage, and then there's like the massive factory behind it. Yeah, so you see the beautiful little wee cottage, and then you just see this vast sort of huge distillery behind it, and you just realize like the scale is, I didn't know the scale until I saw it anyway, with all your washbacks outside, and just, yeah, it's a big old site.
Yeah, it's surprised. Like, you know, even being born and brought up in Elgin, I didn't really know much about Glen Moray Distillery. It wasn't one that hit the radar too much. But when you get into the site and you see it, you know, we've got all our warehousing for Glen Moray's on site. So we've got warehousing capacity for about 169,000 casks. The big how shall I word this? I'm going to say it. Big ugly building that you see when you come down. The big asbestos black building, which when I first started, I was like, oh my God, this doesn't look great. I've come to love it. I don't know if it might be Stockholm syndrome. I don't know, but I've come to love it as iconically Glen Moray. But that's a huge malt storage area, way bigger than we need as a distillery. In there, we have 18 malt bins. We actually only use 8 of them. So there's 10 of them ultimately that are redundant. And that was because back in the 1950s, we were malting in a relatively large salad and box maltings, not just for ourselves, but for Glenmorangie. So we needed that additional storage capacity for the barley coming in, plus the malt that was being produced and sent up to Glenmorangie. We were holding on to it before it was picked up and transported up the road. So even now, having expanded the distillery pretty much fourfold to where we are, we still don't need all of that huge storage, malt storage that you see when you come down at the site, the first thing you see when you come down on the site.
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder what that big old shed was. Cornelia gave us a very whistle-stop tour of the place. But yeah, it kind of dominates the whole site. But
It does. We spoke about removing it. It is asbestos, so ultimately there is going to be a time where it does need to go. It's looked after and maintained, so it doesn't have to go for the time being. So there's been discussions about removing it, but as I say, I kind of feel that when I see it, I know it's Glen Moray. It doesn't look like any other distillery. So that's these days when everybody's trying to look old and traditional and what have you, we kind of stand out. We look a little bit different.
Already nailing that. Trendsetters.
Yeah, that's what we are. Let's go with that.
Every distillery wants their own massive, ugly asbestos square
exactly. In the middle of it. You'll start to see them pop up everywhere when they've seen how successful Glen Moray has become. They'll all think that's the reason. That's what we need to do.
When we were advertising the Blether, I put out a wee story. I think you shared it yourself on Star Wars quotes. What Star Wars quotes would also be good in a whiskey tasting. And there was one, I did a bit of research myself, good excuse to dig back into Star Wars. And there was a quote in The Mandalorian, and you touched it earlier. It's a lot of first people's, I don't know if you're into the spin-offs and stuff, but there's a quote in The Mandalorian. It says, "I like firsts, good or bad, they're always memorable." So that's actually quite a cool whiskey themed.
Yeah, well, that we'll take that as a good quote, because that is, for Glen Moray, that is a lot of people's first experience, or single malt experience, because as I say, that our classic that we do in the supermarkets that you can pick up for 19-20 pounds a bottle, you can't beat it. It's a great little dram for that price.
Do you remember your first whiskey?
The light bulb one that stands out it was above any. That was the one where I was like, yeah, this is the journey I'm going on.
So you get that quite a lot in the shop. Balveni's.
Yeah, that was my first one where I was like, yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm not just drinking for the effects. I'm drinking because I actually enjoy it. That was the first one. So yeah, that one got me that got me hooked. That was the one that dragged me in.
Nice.
Yeah, that's not a bad opening dram, really, is it? I think mine was, well, I keep pronouncing, so my colleague keeps correcting me about this, and it's good because I am the arsehole that corrects people all the time. So I am willing to be corrected. But so it's Glen Morangie, right? Not Glen Morangie. Glen. Where's the emphasis?
Orangey.
Orangey.
Like
so Glen.
Yeah.
Glen Morangie. I think I've been pronouncing it forever, but now I'm super self-conscious of it. But that was my foray into single malt. And I think it's usually something like Glen Morangie, or Balvenie, or Glenfiddich, isn't it? I think the big power three are usually most Scotch people.
It was Dalwhinnie for me. For Scotch, for single malt, I was a Jameson's drinker before that, and then switched on to Dalwhinnie. Was the malt that got me thinking about Scotch. Is it, as you say, Iain, down a journey that is drinking for pleasure rather than drinking for the sake of getting drunk. And it was an Irish bar. I used to drink loads of Jamesons with ice. Their ice machine broke one night, so I had to drink it neat. And that was the eye-opener. That was when I started thinking there's more to this than just throwing down your neck. And then try to find a Scotch, and it was Dalwhinnie that kind of linked quite closely to the flavour of Jameson. And I was working in a bar, a hotel at the time as well, so I never really understood whiskey until that point. So if you're watching at home, let us know what your first drams were. Danny Hebbington is straight on saying Lagavulin 16 was the whiskey that got him hooked. That's a pretty powerful. Yeah. We're all on the light, elegant, smooth kind of low, not low flavour, but kind of softer flavour. And then we've got Lagavulin at the other end of the scale. Pretty punchy.
It's funny. We always kind of like, I always had this opinion that you end up on an island. You don't start there. You have to build up to it. But I remember doing a tasting back when we were with Glen Moray, and obviously we had our bag in the portfolio. And it was husband and wife. They were doing a tour and they'd never had whiskey before. And we used to always throw in a Glen Moray or an Ardbeg into the tasting. And she couldn't get her head around whiskey. She just wasn't loving it. And I poured her an Ardbeg thinking that you're going to hate this. And she just lit up. And it kind of woke me up to the fact that you don't have to build up to it. If you've got that built-in taste that's what you like, then that's going to be the one for you. So I never kind of now have that approach where we're going to start you off light. If somebody has a taste profile for something that's big and bold, then don't hold back. Throw them in the deep end if you think that's where they're going to swim.
I had a very similar story with my wife Tony. I was trying to give her, your classics, the ones, the kind of 40% bourbon, Speyside, fruity, floral, sweet, these kind of drams. And it was the Bowmore 12 that got her hooked. And now she's a smoky bourbon fan. Just loves all that kind of whiskey. So, it was probably, just that mindset thinking we have to introduce you to a whiskey, so it's going to be a softer thing. And then, but yeah, as you say, we do at the shop, we do tastings for quaich ceremonies, and that's always quite interesting. You get the bride and the groom in; they want to have a whiskey that they're not going to screw their face up at, and more often than not, it's the bride who doesn't drink the whiskey. So we just sit down and we chat to them. What kind of food do you like? Do you drink wine? Do you beer or cider, or try and build up their flavour profile before, and then we start the whiskey on their kind of flavour profile. So it gives us a little bit more to go on rather than, but we'll try something soft and sweet. We've got quite a few.
There's a lot of first whiskies coming in.
Yeah, we're tied. And Glen Moray 10 has 2, and Lagavulin 16 has 2. Whereas Roy's got the Dalmore 12 was there, Balblair 2005. Bunnahabhain 12 did it for Tim. Started the journey, this is Pete Head and Frank, with Johnny Walker Red. So the journey stopped until he was in his 40s and he tasted Laphroaig quarter cask. Hence the nickname.
Nice.
Pete Head, there we go. Glenmorangie for Scott was the first malt when he was younger, but Glengoyne is when he started taking it seriously. So yeah, quite a mix. We've got some Islay, some Highland, some Speyside, Buna 12, the unpeated Islay. Yeah, not every Islay is peated, I suppose, so, and not every Speyside is unpeated. So there's loads of fun stuff to throw in there.
Well, yeah. So I did a tasting once for you, Mike, and it was the note came in 100% no peat. So we looked out some whiskies, but I would put, I think, I don't know, maybe it just annoyed me, but we had a Bunnahabhain and then we had a Benromach. No, sorry, we had the Bunnahabhain on the tasting and the customer had spotted it and said, oh, no, I don't do peat, I don't do Islay. I was like, well, okay, so what's your favorite whiskey? He's like, well, only Speyside. I was like, okay, what's your favorite Speyside? He says, oh, Benromach. I was like, I don't know what to do with this situation. I don't know how to break this to you. So his favorite whiskey of the night was Bunnahabhain. I was like, you just don't know what you like. You're a bit psychological, isn't it? People think Islay and they think medicinal and they think salinity, and that's not for everyone. And as soon as you have that idea in your head, I guess it sets you up to maybe not like something before you've tried it. But yeah, judge it all on its own merit, I would say. Try it all responsibly.
It depends on how old you are as well, because the choice now, the kids these days are spoiled for choice. You can walk into Mike's shop and the selection there, when I was growing up was very basic, and I always say to people as well, back in my day, I'm sounding like an old man. I am an old man now. So back in my day, it was very easy to dislike a distillery because they only maybe had 3 expressions, and they were all quite similar. They were all maybe either just bourbon cask, non-peated, with a selection of ages, and there was a real kind of thread and similarity to it. But now distilleries have got such a broad range within their own portfolio. You can find something for everybody. You know, when I first started at Glen Moray, we had 3. We had the classic, we had the 12, we had a 16, and the odd limited edition now and then. Now we've got probably about 23, including limited editions and special releases.
You always have 3 on the shop as well, don't you?
Yeah, we've always got the 3 bottle your owns. We've got distillery editions. We've got the Warehouse 1 collection. We've got the Explorer collection, the Experience collection. The marketing love giving the collections names. The Experience collection, the Heritage collection, all these different ranges. Which, from a Glen Moray perspective, you know, what we're trying to do that we didn't have before was give the consumer or the drinker the journey that we've been kind of touching on, that where you start. In Glen Moray was a lot of people's first ones, as we've said, but they had nowhere else to go. If they liked our product, we didn't really have much else to take them onwards and upwards with. You know, we had so many. We used to sell a ton of our stock for independent bottlers, because if they didn't find us from the supermarkets, they found us from the SMWS. Because we had so many of our casks going through SMWS, and they would come to us and say, what have you got that's similar to a 35 or whatever? And we used to have to say nothing because we didn't do cask strength single cask bottlings. So we lost them. They disappeared. They went off somewhere else. Now we've got those products. Now we've got the stuff that we can say, right, okay, well, if you liked your 35 port, hogshead, whatever, we can give you something that will sit alongside that or be equivalent to.
Yeah. We've got PX Woodhouse on YouTube. He's saying that pound for pound, some of the best distillery exclusives in Speyside that he's came across. And I have to agree as well. In your tastings, he's saying 3 25ml drams for a tenner at the distillery. We popped in before the festival in Elgin, and a couple of friends made a couple of your flights. So it's just incredible. The value you get there. Beautiful little shop, and the range of whiskies. You know, you've got peated, you've got full bourbon, you've got rum, you've got do some tremendous wine finishes as well. It's such a range. My second dram is going to be one so fully matured in a Burgundy. This is our first ever shop exclusive we took out.
I think at that.
Yeah.
Pretty.
And it's got dust on it as well.
Shocking.
Well,
Well,
makes it look more vintage.
Yeah, makes it look older. So we got 150. And I remember it was Graham Cool who was the manager at the time, and I just pinged him. It was so easy. I pinged him a message saying, would you be able to do around about 150 bottles for a shop exclusive? And he's like, yeah, come up and you can pick one. He had about 4 or 5 selected. I picked one. He says, we'll have it ready for you. Pay half now and half later, and we'll. Yeah, I just went up in the car. We loaded it into the shop, into the back of the car in the boot, and drove 150 bottles of whiskey home.
I remember that. I think I bottled half of them. So it's,
I think, yeah. It was all down.
It rings a bell now. And I've got to go back to your comment earlier that before you went to the festival, so before you went to a room full of whiskey, you decided to pop into a distillery and have a couple of flights of whiskey. So that's commitment. I'm proud.
Yeah. the train was early. I think we had some time to mull around. Just walked up because it's on the way really from the train station.
Yeah, you just pass by a couple of flights of whiskey before you go and get some more whiskey.
Exactly. The festival didn't start till at 12 or something. So.
Responsibly, of course.
100%. Yeah, I do. My journey home was somewhat less responsible. So we went back to the Druthi Cobbler, the pub in Elgin, which is, I found out later, about 6 minutes walk from to the train station. And I missed my train, having left like an hour before to walk to the train station to make sure I got it on time. I got completely bamboozled in Elgin. I had no idea where I was going. I think it might have been the flights pre-festival that just tipped me over the edge. Couldn't work the sat nav on my phone. No idea where I was going, and had to get a taxi home.
In an hour, you could walk to Kat's place in Huntley.
You could walk You were probably heading that direction, to be honest.
Probably. Yeah.
Gosh, that's funny.
Yeah. It wasn't until the morning after I looked at my phone and it was like, it's a 6-minute walk. Took me over an hour and a taxi to get home.
That was a taxi from Elgin to Inverurie. Jeez, I bet you've felt that.
Well, the great thing is, by the time I got home, I was sober again, so I went out. I just got to drop me at the pub and went out again.
Oh, you did.
You cannot walk. It cannot take you an hour to walk the entire length and breadth of Elgin. It's 30 minutes max.
I think I did it twice. I probably walked past the train station, didn't even realise it was a station.
Yeah.
We've got Dave here, just moving on from my shenanigans. David Muir has said he honestly doesn't know when his whiskey journey started. I guess it was Bell's or Grouse in the supermarket had an offer a Glenlivet. Years later, he met Mike and has enjoyed so many fantastic drams through the shop. But I'd say the Glenallachie 15, if you had a choice, that is a very popular one, I have to say. It's a beautiful whiskey. So thank you, David, for that. Phil is asking, how do you decide what joins the bottle your own lineup? Is that you'll be involved in that, are you, Iain?
Yeah, so that's the one that Stephen lets me loose on for picking for the shop. Well, first of all, all the casks that we have at the distillery, they're on a computer program called Drams. So everything is logged on there, and he's got all the casks allocated that he needs for upcoming projects, bottlings, whether it's core range or limited edition. So whatever else, he generally refers to them as being in the wild. So anything that's still in the wild that's not allocated, we've got free rein at. We can pick and choose what we want to have on shelf. What I try and do is make sure that we're not overlapping. If we've got a limited edition red wine cask, for example, don't want to put a red wine cask on Bottle Your Own. We try and keep it different so that we're broadening the selection, keeping things as different and as varied as possible. At the moment, what we've got, we always have three, and there's a kind of set rule for the three. So if you're ever at the distillery and you're looking at the wall where we've got cask 1, 2, and 3, left to right, the one on the left is always under 10 years old. The one in the middle, cask 2, is always over 10 years old, and the one on the right is always peated. So that's the basic rule we apply, and then after that, it's whatever we've got free and available in terms of casks in the warehouse. So as I say, at the moment we've got a port cask. I've got a Chianti. I've got a 20-year-old Chianti cask. Wow. It's 15 years in bourbon, 5 years finishing in Chianti. It's quite elegant. I always like whiskies that surprise me, that do what I'm not expecting. And that was a cask where a lot of the red wines we get, red wine casks typically are shortcut to flavor, big, bold, punchy. And it was really quite elegant, and it was quite soft and gentle, and with the 20 years behind it, the alcohol was not too overpowering. So it was just a lovely, soft red wine cask, which took me by surprise. And then in peated at the moment, what have we got in peated at the moment? Oh, peated Fino. And that's the opposite. Normally with a Fino cask, you're expecting something a little bit softer from a sherry front, but that's quite big for the sherry. But it's fully matured, so it's had its full term maturing in sherry.
That sounds fun. A peated Fino Glen Moray. I might have to come up and have a look at that. That sounds a lot. I can't remember what was on when I was in. I also got the port one. How old's that? Where I got 1, 2, or 3. I don't know. Bottled in 2023. Filled 2014. How old's that?
So that'd be cask 1. Yeah, so that's under. I'll be a 9-year-old.
Yeah. Yes. I think Glen Moray and port seem to be a good combination, though. Like, it does seem to work really well.
Ports Port's our second most filled cask. Unless you take, if you take wine as a category or sherry as a category, I think they would probably supersede. But bourbon's number one for us, and then port's number two. And that's partly because of ownership. The company that owns us is the world's number one port producer, so we get access to such a phenomenal library of port casks. And like you say, it works. We'd been doing port even before we were owned by La Martiniquez. Our centenary bottling back in '97 was a port cask. And then we introduced a 25-year-old, which was port cask, and the 21 at the moment is port cask. So, yeah, we do quite a bit with port.
The 21 was probably my standout dram at the tasting that we had. I thought it was fantastic.
21 is
yeah. And great value as well. The 18 as well. It's very rare you get an 18-year-old for under £100 now. You guys have just really got a good kind of price point there for quality. I think people nowadays are much more. It's not so much price, but it's value. They're looking for. They don't mind spending a little bit more if it's good value. But if they can get something that hits a certain budget for its quality inside, that's what people really want to. Doesn't matter how much money you have. I think if you're not getting value for money, then you're not going to buy it again.
Yeah, excuse me. We've got if you're traveling, certain airports, I think Gatwick have got our 18-year-old at 45 quid a bottle, which is just a crazy price. It's so good. Retail on shelf is 65, which is a good price, but if you can go through an airport for a whiskey which is 47% on-chill filtered, first fill bourbon casks, Speyside single malt, unbeatable from a price perspective.
That sounds like my sort of whiskey. I don't have it, but I'm going to have to look out for that.
You should. I know somebody who does.
Is it you?
Quite possibly.
So you are collaborating with Fraser for Whiskey Talks for Spirit of Speyside, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Done Fraser for years, and we always like to come up with something different for Spirit of Speyside, purely for our own sanity more than anything, so that we're not just rehashing the same old tastings. We like to come up with I live by the ethos that if we find it fun, somebody else will find it fun. We've done everything from to drag the conversation back to Star Wars themed tastings, because the Spirit of Speyside lands on May the 4th, so it made absolute sense to me. So doing a tasting dressed as a stormtrooper, it's not easy to drink with a helmet.
May the 4th be with you, right?
Yes, you say you don't know, but you do know.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. Now that's clever. Yes,
yeah.
That's clever. Okay.
Do you just not go on Facebook at all on May the 4th? Because that's all you see.
No, not so much. So yeah, like dressing up as like Star Wars character, like doing a tasting dressed up as like a character. I can't think of any characters.
Yeah, so so an alien. Let's go with that. I was dressed as a stormtrooper. We did it twice. It was myself and Hans Offringen. I've known Hans for years. Such a lovely guy. We've done a lot of tastings together, and it was actually his idea. He phoned me up and he was like, "A tasting for this year's Spirit of Speyside." He said, "It's May the 4th. Let's do a Star Wars themed tasting." And I was like, well, I don't need to be asked twice to do that. So we managed to get a few cosplayers involved, and we've got pictures in the warehouse of lightsaber duels and things like that. So yeah, it was literally us living our best lives. We were just mixing two things that we loved, and people loved it. So we said after the first one, we thought we thought it went so well. We said, let's never touch that again. Let's not do it, because it will never be as good as the first one. So we promised ourselves we wouldn't do it. And then COVID hit and we didn't get to do anything fun for years. And I met Hans at a whiskey festival, and he was like, yeah, let's do it again. So we revisited it last year. So we did it again, but we're going to park it for a little while.
Do you know,
So,
for tiki whiskey, have to release a Glen Moray with like their sort of Easter egg label of just you dressed as the Sky Walker dude or something. That would be very, very good.
I'd be on board for that. So basically, we were trying to come up with something different. Like this year, we're doing I don't know if Mike, you're old enough, but remember those choose your own adventure books you used to have as a kid?
Yeah.
So we've decided to do a choose your own adventure whiskey tasting, where
That's
everybody goes on a different journey depending on which whiskies they choose. So we're doing one of those this year, and we thought we've never done a panel tasting where we get other people involved and we drag in some other faces from the industry, so they don't just have to listen to me talking garbage for however long. So we thought, well, there's no point reinventing the wheel because Fraser's doing this already and he's doing it really well. So I picked up the phone to him. That's a lie. I WhatsApped him and said, any chance you'd be up for this? And he was like, oh yeah, we'd be up for that. So he came along and got Steph and Kai involved as well. So it was just out of, we want to do a panel tasting because we haven't done one of them before. So really that was the approach. And I'd heard so many great things. I think it was Juliet at Glenallachie had been to the one in Inverness, and she was singing the praises of it, said it was such a good afternoon. And I'd kind of, it was on my radar to do one. And I thought, well, saves me having to travel, get Fraser, come to us, and we'll do it at the Distillery. And he thankfully was on board. So that was the birth of that one. Just wanted to do a panel discussion. So
they're a lot of fun. Me and Mike have been to the last 2 whiskey talks in Aberdeen. And like there's nothing else like it. And it's so nice to just get a room of people together and just see where the conversation goes. I really, really enjoy the last 2 that have been, and like the range of conversation that comes out, it's just really interesting. Everything from like the tourism side of things to like, I don't know, we end up talking about, I can't remember what we was talking about last time we were at it, but yeah, a lot of topics are covered, and it's just a lot of fun as well. It's just nice to chill out and see some familiar faces or meet new people. But yeah, no, I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, I always think, and I said this at the time, that a lot of whiskey tastings get too geeky. We lose sometimes the pleasure of whiskey. Like what I love about the industry is, and this is a cliche, it's people. But it's people who are talking passionately about a subject, and you can get lost, and sometimes the geekiness goes over your head. I say geeky coming from the guy who did a Star Wars tasting, but what I mean is that sciencey, detailed, and I like to just make it fun. Just try and have an event at the distillery where you get people talking passionately, and whether you understand it or not, I just love listening to people talking with a bit of passion, and that's always fun. So that's kind of what we're aiming for with this one. And Fraser, I know when he was doing his brand ambassadorial stuff, we shared an importer in a few markets, so used to see him out and about. So I'd known him for years and just know that he's a guy that talks passionately about the subject. So just getting somebody like that in the room, you can't lose. You've got whiskey, you've got people out for the weekend to enjoy themselves, and you've got people talking from a place of love and passion. It's got to be fun.
Also ridiculously tall. Very tall man. Super tall.
Very tall man. And great beard. Back to the beard conversation. I think we had offline, so we could get the beard back in.
I think it's a good job that I'm not actually tall enough, because I'm always tempted to just touch his beard every time I see him. And I know it's inappropriate, but
I'm sure he wouldn't.
I'm sure he wouldn't, mate. You might have to tell him first that you're going to touch his beard.
Just want to touch your beard, just like that. But great beard. Tall guy, great beard.
Yeah, I don't get beard envy too often, but Fraser gives me beard envy. So.
I know, it has been quite beard heavy, the chat tonight, offline and online, as you just said.
Yeah.
We were just admiring Mike's very bushy beard before he went online. He's quite the... Yeah, well, it'd be interesting if MD at home noticed the difference tonight, but we reckon that Mike's got a bushier beard tonight. But
I mean, it won't get less bushy because I haven't done anything with it. It's probably unkempt rather than bushy.
Just your winter layer on.
Yeah, I just need to pluck out a few whites now and then just to keep it one colour.
Chili salt beard.
To go back to our bald head chat, I remember before I started to go grey, before I started to go bald, I started to go grey, and my wife was like, "Does it not bother you?" And I was like, "Well, it's the ones that are changing colour don't bother me. It's the ones that are leaving that worry me."
A couple of guys at work were talking about losing their hair, and they were saying they kind of now don't know where their face, like where they stop washing their face. And,
Not
like,
washing, yeah.
Just keep going.
like they're now buying more soap, less shampoo. And so yeah, I don't know what your cutoff point there is.
I've had that jokes as well. Yeah, been there. And I mean, I blame getting married because I had a full head of hair when I met Tony. And now
I'm telling on you.
I tell her that all the time. It's her fault. I mean, it was 15 years ago, but
Well,
it's not going to do the sales of Glen Moray any good. But I'm going to blame Glen Moray because I had a full head of hair when I joined Glen Moray. I've seen the old pictures.
Do you know what? I was completely bald before I started Glengarry, and look at me now. Quality.
There you go. You should get that on the label. I don't think I have a bottle of Glengarry in my collection, so I would buy one for that reason.
This is the problem. Get yourself a bottle. Fix all your holes.
Exactly. That's the problem. That's what I need to do.
I could dispel that myth because I have ample Glengarrys in my collection. I've never washed my hair with it though. Never tried that. So maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
So I mean, because I work for the company, do not wash your body or head with alcohol or our alcohol. I will not be responsible for that advice going out live.
This isn't getting recorded, is it? Yeah, so Glengarry makes your hair grow back. Is that what you said, Kat? You said that?
No, do not wash your head with Glengarry, please. It has descended into chaos. Oh, I do know something about Star Wars because there's the guy that's all hair, isn't he? The
Wookiee.
Yeah.
It might be an Ewok. It could be.
Oh yeah.
No, the one that hangs out with Harrison Ford, that flies the spaceships.
Yeah.
Chewbacca.
Yeah. See, look at my. I thought I was going to be tapping out pretty early. I was panicking about the chat tonight because I thought we were going to be talking about a lot of Star Wars. But look at me, keeping up with the big boys.
that was one. There was a quote that came up that could be in a whiskey tasting as well, and it's probably more if you have a tasting of a whiskey that you didn't like. It was, "I'd rather kiss a Wookiee." One for the whiskey fans that maybe try something you don't like. If you'd rather kiss a Wookiee, that's a good note for something that's maybe not up your street.
The one I liked was from Cameron McGeechy at Cadenheads. I don't know if he messaged me or whether it was put on the chat, but he was, these things smell worse on the inside than they do on the outside. I've had a few bottle of whiskies that could fit that. I'm not going to.
I thought, it's when he cuts open the tauntaun, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we're losing Kat here.
Just nodding. I mean, I've got 3 sons, but we never really did Star Wars, or if they did, I don't know if I ever watched the whole one. But
it's surprising because they've kind of grown up in a period where it's kind of really got a revival. Whether you enjoy them as much as the old movies or not, it's certainly a new kind of series or a film coming out every year. So I mean, they've grown up in prime Star Wars bingeability, I guess.
Yeah, I think they maybe just know my absolute hate of aliens, so they've maybe just never dared to turn them on to. I think they've probably watched it, and I've just not been. So when the kids watch, or when they were littler anyway, when the kids were watching films, it was my chance to sit down and just doze off. So I've never actually seen like a whole kids film start to finish. I've only ever seen the very start and the very end. So I probably just slept through a lot of Star Wars films if I watched them.
There's not that many aliens in it, to be honest. Yeah.
There's not that many aliens.
No.
Isn't the whole thing set in space?
Yeah. I think the newer ones are more alien heavy. I think as CGI has become a thing, but it's set in space. If you don't like aliens, then
It's not
I
my
get
not my
I
jam.
get your dislike.
So, what don't you like about aliens? Are you scared that they're going to come down and kidnap you, or is it specifically
No,
movie aliens?
they're just so rude. Like the whole concept of aliens annoy me because like just because you've got better shit, you can't just turn up and beam people up and laser people's cows. Like it's just rude. Like okay, advanced race, but get some manners. So that's the whole thing that annoys me about aliens. I think I just need to have a good proper sit down and chat with them. And once we got over that beef, I understood what they were wanting. And why America? Why only beam up Americans? What are you gaining from that? Like, not intelligence. No offense to any of the American watching, but we've met Trump.
I was going to say your chat that I dislike aliens and they're so rude. That was very Trumpism.
That was, wasn't it? Yeah.
When you see people being interviewed, like it's always just people that say the most ridiculous things. Like, yeah, my husband, I'm pretty sure he's an alien now. I'm like, are you though? So I don't know. I'm yet to be convinced. I need to meet a nice alien who just wants to talk peace. And then I'll maybe review the situation and watch Star Wars. Anywho, you did ask.
I did. Yeah. And now we've offended like all our watchers from over the pond. I feel like I've been here before. I'm going to apologize to you guys.
I was basing that on Trump, and I'm sorry if you are a Trump supporter, but I'm sure he says lots of sensible things when we aren't listening also. It's just bad timing.
Danny Hebbington said, you can just imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger saying to the Predator, "You're just rude." And you're just like, you know what? Sorry, we've got off on the wrong foot. I'll put my slasher stick away and just let's have a beer.
It would make certainly a shorter film. It
would have done.
Yeah.
We bring it back to the whiskey chat. I'm going to pour my second dram. So my glass is empty. So.
What are you on?
Maybe try
not a Glen Moray. I've got a Glen Moray after this. But I opened this last week. I had an online catch up with a friend of mine, Jason, who works for Single Cask Nation. I don't know if you know those guys.
Yeah. I don't know Jason. I know the brand. Yeah.
So known Jason for a few years. Great friend of mine, lovely guy. So we hadn't had a catch up for a while. So I cracked open one of his bottles. And I pulled this one out tonight because it was the night before they were heading to the American World Whiskey, the Whiskey Awards, and they won Independent Bottler of the Year. So thought I'll raise another glass of this to him and the team at Single Cask Nation for picking up that award. It's a 5-year-old Virginia distillery, fully matured in Oloroso sherry. So like the Oloroso Glen Moray you're drinking, it's the sherry bomb. I think, was it you, Kat, that asked the question, what makes a sherry bomb? Did I see something on a chat somewhere? Or maybe it was somebody else.
I did a blog on it yesterday.
Oh, right.
I posted a blog on what makes a sherry bomb, yeah.
This makes a sherry bomb. And the Oloroso sherry you've got, this is just ridiculous. And what I love about this is it's cask number 666. So it's the cask of the beast as well.
That's very cool.
What is it? How strong is it again? I can't remember. I need glasses. Sorry. It's 58.3% ABV.
I don't know if this is creepy or not, but this is distillation date was the 6th of the 6th.
We should all get a lottery ticket. I haven't got any 6s on my one. I'm still trying to get into it. I do understand how it opens. It's just not opening.
Why would you put it back in the box? It took you half an hour to open it with Quinelli's chat.
I know. Talking of award winners, we are in the presence of the Scotch brand ambassador of the year last year, wasn't it? It was last year you won that.
It was December 23. So I held the title for 24, which was 23 was such a great year. I had a blast in 23. Everything we touched turned golden. There you go. You got it. So yeah, that topped off a nice year, so I had that for the year. That was through the Icons of Whisky Awards, which I won for, not to boast, but it's the second time
You
I've
should
had it,
boast.
so I'm so over it. So I won it for Visitor Centre Visitor Centre Manager a few years ago. And I've been to the dinner probably about 6 times, and I've never won anything. And every time that I've won something, I've not been able to go. So I'm just going to stop going. And it seems to be the trick for winning.
That's the trick to winning. Normally,
Yeah.
these kind of things you have to go to have a chance of winning, don't you? So.
Yes. So so I'm going to plan things for whenever they have their awards dinner, so that I can't make it, and see how that works out for me. So that was just a really lovely end to 2023, which was such a great year for us, for the brand, for the team. Stephen won the blender as well, the award there. So we just had such a great year. It was such a fun time in 2023. We had a few launches that went really well. We had the 100th anniversary for Curry Sark, which was just a tremendous event that we'd organised down on the Curry Sark in London. So that was just a lot of fun. So 2023 was just was golden. I had a great time. I think marketing are sick of me telling them that, can we do another 2023?
That's fantastic, though. And you've got your 20-year anniversary. I mean, are you going to do August? You said is your
so August is 20 years at Glen Moray. Back when I had hair. Back to that chat again. So
looking at the timeline in Ingvar's book.
Was that?
I was looking at the timeline in Ingvar's book, and there's not an entry here in 2005 for when you joined. So I think we need to correct them for the next edition.
Well, Ingvar's a regular visit at the distillery, so I'll need to have a chat with him and say, fix that. I've not planned anything. We spoke briefly about doing a tasting of some 20-year-old whiskies. Look and see what we've got in the warehouse. Get some cask samples and maybe do a tasting. For my 18th anniversary at the distillery, did a tasting. It coincided. It wasn't planned as specifically the 18th anniversary, but it happened to turn out to be. I was doing a tasting at Juliet twice. I've mentioned Juliet Glenallan.
She's watching, so she's maybe in.
Yeah, okay. So hi, if you're watching, Juliet. We did it in our bar in Elgin against the grain. So we did a beer and whiskey tasting. So that was a lot of fun. So maybe look at resurrecting and doing another one of them, because that was fun back a few years ago.
You just had a refit.
I was going to say, you can ever roll out to doing Star Wars again. Surely you can assist on it for your 20-year anniversary. There must be something you can do with that.
Yeah, we should do, but I've heard there's a lot of people who don't like aliens, so I don't want to exclude.
Controversial.
you risk alienating your community there, don't you?
Oh, it's
very good.
As a mic drop moment, Mike.
That's such an achievement, though, to spend 20 years with a company. That's absolutely fantastic. You've seen, it sort of grow and develop over the years. And obviously you started in the visitor centre and worked your way up to, is it global brand ambassador is your title? That's absolutely amazing. It's such a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, it's been a great journey, and some of it is just evolved, because I was doing all the whiskey shows in the UK even before I had the title of brand ambassador, and then it was just a case of somebody dropping me an email, do you want to do a European show back? I think my first international show was back in 2009. I went out to Inter Whisky in Frankfurt. I actually got the bug for whiskey shows back with Macallan. I got asked to do Whisky Live, the infamous, if anybody ever did Whisky Live on George Square back in 2004. That was my first ever whiskey festival event. And it was absolute carnage. It was a drunken mess of people. You came out, it was a marquee on George Square. They had two marquees. One was a blend marquee and one was a single malt marquee. And I remember coming away from that weekend going, these are my people. I like this. I could do this. I could do more of this. So that gave me the taste, and I still love whiskey festivals. That's still the part of the job that gives me the most buzz. Getting out, pouring whiskey, doing a masterclass, That's the part I still love doing. Whether it's in the UK, whether it's, I had the pleasure of doing Tokyo Whisky Fest last year. We do our second biggest market for Glen Moray's Australia, so usually hit Australia once a year. So whether it's on the doorstep or whether it's literally the other side of the world, it's generally a lot of people in a room who love whiskey and want to talk about it, and I like those things. So it's not to love. And again, it's a cliche, but they say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and it feels a lot
100%.
like that doing this job.
Very
And
true.
you pinch yourself. You're like paid to travel the world, as well as turn up at whiskey events that I would quite happily pay to do myself. So
Yeah.
it's a dream job. I love it. I love the team. We've got such a great team. You need to have a great team that allow me to sort off and do these things, because I still kind of oversee, in inverted commas, the visitor centre. But to be honest, the team there, we've got Emma, who's my assistant there. She does all the hard work now. I get to just swan around and do the fun stuff.
We all need somebody like that, don't we?
Everybody needs an Emma in their life. I always say that.
Well, that's how we met. We met at a whiskey show, which there was the chat before we went live, and we met at the National Whiskey Festival in the music hall 2 years ago. Because because it was a really, really hot day, and I went straight from work, and they said there was going to be food, and there wasn't, and the drams hit quite hard, and I spotted you, and I was like, oh my god, I know Cornelli, and he works with you, and I love Glen Moray, blah, 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 blah. So luckily you didn't seem to remember that when we were chatting.
Is that why it's taken 2 years for Iain to agree to come on to the Blether?
It could be. What's your favorite festival to go to? Because I mean, I see so many amazing ones. Every year you kind of see all the ambassadors that I follow on social media, and you see some fantastic reels and photographs appearing, and they all look fantastic. But so what's your kind of go-to one that you're like, I hope I get back to that one this year?
I always, I've always said to the marketing team, if you stop me from doing festivals, if you just let me do one a year, I would do Whisky Fringe down in Edinburgh during the Fringe in August. I love the Fringe. Love being in Edinburgh during that period of time, and to have a whiskey festival slap bang in the middle of that for 3 days is my dream. Love it, and it's a great show. It's a great show because they've kept it old school. Like you're only allowed a table and a pop-up banner, so there's none of this brand, for want of a better phrase, pissing contest. Some of the big shows where brands are spending ridiculous amounts of money on ridiculously overdressed stands. And I'm just saying that because I'm bitter and jealous because we don't get to spend all that kind of money. But the Whisky Fringe, they strip it back. They just, you've got a pop-up, you've got a table, and that's all you get. Like last year, I remember speaking to the guys there, and they says, "Oh, we made the biggest change we've ever made. We offered pies downstairs." So that was their big revelatory change for the running of it, and it sells out really quick. And from a brand point of view, I shouldn't say this in case anybody from my marketing team are listening. It's probably not a great show because it sells out so quickly. It's the people in the know that buy the tickets, and you're speaking to the same people every year, and they're all lovely people, so I'm happy to see them come back. So it's I love it. I think it's a great. That would be my one. I love Whisky Fringe.
I've always wanted to go to that. I think this year has to be my year for doing it. Maybe
don't do it this year, because this year my current gripe. Everybody at the distillery is sick of me moaning about this. But it's the same weekend that the Gallagher brothers have decided to reband and come to Edinburgh. So the price of hotels in Edinburgh have skyrocketed because it's that weekend. So I'm desperately searching for a hotel because at the moment I don't think we can afford to go as a brand.
You could stay in Glasgow though and just commute over, because when Taylor Swift played, where did Taylor Swift play? Did she play in Edinburgh?
Yeah, she was Murrayfield, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I was in Glasgow at the Barrowlands at a concert with a pal, and when we were getting back on the train and stuff in the buses, there was just girls everywhere in sequins and cowboy boots. And I was like, what is going on? But everybody was going to Taylor, but they were staying in Glasgow because Glasgow's accommodation was cheaper. So they were just like bussing it over to Edinburgh. So you can maybe just do that. Sequins optional. I mean, maybe don't need to do the sequins, but yeah, it might be a cheaper way of doing it.
Yeah, we did. I was out tour of Canada at the tail end of last year, and it was Toronto was the last leg of the Eras tour, and I was in Toronto that night, and yeah, the whole city was sequins. So yeah, I was, if I could have found somewhere, I'd have joined in, but it was too short notice.
Yeah. I mean, Edinburgh's not cheap at the best of times, but when something like that happens, and I've seen the set that they do is only going to last like an hour, or not even an hour. So there's a big kickback on that. As you know, it's not Taylor.
Yeah, it just annoyed me that I'm not a huge fan of Oasis, and they're possibly interrupting my favourite whiskey festival for me. I'm even less of a fan than I started out. So.
You know what? There's 8 months to go. They'll probably break up again, and it'll be cancelled. So
we will.
And then there'll be lots of people trying to get rid of accommodation, so you might get a bargain.
Yeah. So yeah, to kind of bring it back to Whiskey Festival, that one, it stands out. There's a couple of the iconic ones. Whiskey Life Paris is huge. It's just, a whiskey drinker's dream. That's where the brands do go all out. I was maybe being flippant earlier. It's quite a sight to behold, and to be able to try some of, particularly if you go for the VIP passes, where you get upstairs to the kind of more expensive whiskies and things like that. You can go there for 3 days and be there from opening to closing, and you're not going to scratch the surface. It's a spirit lover's dream. And the Whisky Exchange show in London is another one of the kind of iconic whiskey festivals, where I think as a whiskey drinker, that'd be your first port of call.
Okay. Yeah, they look pretty massive, to be honest. It would be fun to go and tick off a couple of the big ones one year and see what they're all about. But yeah.
And it's funny because they're London and Paris based, but I don't really consider them as it's not really a French or a London show, because people are traveling all, this is the draw of whiskey. This is the draw of our product, what we work with and what we love. It's people are traveling from all over the world. I met a friend of mine who I knew from the Quebec Whiskey Club. He came over especially for the Whiskey Life Paris. So, people are traveling all over to these big ones, the big iconic ones.
I know a couple of guys are coming over for the Independent Festival. David Stark's running with Keith Duncan in Edinburgh on the 15th of March. I know a couple of guys coming over from the States specifically for that. I think they're launching the independent version of the Water Life movie as well, the sequel to that film. So I think it's going to be a big weekend in Edinburgh. As well. So are you getting down to that, or
what date is it again?
It's the 15th of March.
I don't think I'm going to make it in March, but it's one that did hit the radar. I did look at it. Obviously, we're not going to be there with the brand, but it is one I would have loved to have done as a punter. So many great independent bottlers these days. The market's full, but they're all people that love the product and want to bring it out for the right reasons rather than just jump on a bandwagon.
And Glen Moray is one that features quite prominently with a lot of indies as well, isn't it? We've had quite a few in the shop, the Gregor Hanna, Lady of the Glen and Berry Brothers, and all these guys kind of really look at Glen Moray as it's just a cracking spirit. And I think you've got that diversity that allows people to maybe bottle something that's a little bit more unique as well.
It's from a spirit perspective, Glen Moray is hugely versatile. It's a lot of distilleries have got this opportunity as well, but we embrace it, we lean into it, and I think a lot of the independent bottlers, if they're buying the spirit rather than the cask, they realize it's a spirit. You can put it in most casks. Yeah, and we do. Our brand tagline is Cask Explorers.
Just not cider casks.
No, we do cider casks. We'd love to revisit, but SWA don't agree. But Yeah, we take it on a journey. We take our spirit and we put it in a lot of different casks. Now, I don't know for sure, but I reckon we're up in the kind of higher echelons of being the most, having the most cask variety than any distillery in Scotland. Particularly if you take it into wine varietals, like I say, we've got a Chianti at the moment on Bottle Your Own, but we've got Chardonnay, Cabernet, Chenin Blanc, Amarone, Barolo, Rioja, we've got Sauternes, Tokai, and to kind of go on to Spirit Speyside as a whiskey festival. This year we're launching a maple syrup cask at Spirit Speyside, which we're not going to call Scotch whisky. We're not going to fall foul of the same trouble we got into with cider. So we're going to call that spirit drink. But that's that idea. If we're going to call ourselves cask explorers, if we're going to embrace that, we have to take it beyond the guidance. We have to say, right, okay, well, we are going to explore cask, whether that's permissible from a Scotch whisky perspective or not. So maple syrup just was one of those opportunities. And, I would love to see us, we spoke about it, and hopefully nobody from marketing is listening in case we decide to run with it, but I would love to see us have a series of spirit drinks. Whiskies that are basically not whiskies just because of the cask. To all intents and purposes, it's Glen Moray single malt, but because the guidance dictates we can't call this a single malt whiskey anymore. So I'd love to do a series of these spirit drinks and show off. I did a tasting not so long ago with a distiller, and they were talking about preserving the spirit character and kind of then not being very careful around putting into casks that didn't overpower. And then I followed up with some of the craziness that we were doing at Glen Moray, where we just see what happens. We see what we can do. We put it in casks, and whether the spirit character gets pushed into the background, so be it. This is about taking it on a cask exploration and a cask journey.
That's quite a different attitude. It's a refreshing attitude, but it's definitely a different attitude, because you're right. A lot of people, it's more about, we don't want the house character to be lost, but like your USP is, let's play around with casks. Let's see what it does. Let's see, what sort of flavors we can get out of that, which is fun for people, because they're not spending a lot of money either. They can do it affordably. They can be like, I tried that one, I tried that one, I tried that one, I'm going to try the next one. It allows people to kind of explore a bit.
We have a core range which allows our spirit character to breathe. It allows it to shine through. Our classic, our 12, our 18, they're bourbon barrels, and as well as anybody, the bourbon barrels let the spirit breathe. It gives it the room in the glass and allows it that opportunity to show its face and show its style. When it comes to limited editions, if we continue that, we end up with a homogeneous mass of same. We want the cast to really shift it, to take it in a different direction. And sometimes that direction will be subtle. We've done some rum casks. I think one of the bottles you've got lined up there, Mike, is the rum cask. The rum.
We used this on a blind tasting. We did a fully virtual blind event where I went round and got some cask exclusives, distillery exclusives. This one fared pretty well, actually. I think overall it was second or third in the lineup in terms of favourite, and nobody picked up it as a rum cask. They picked up Speyside. They picked up I think it was 8 years old. Yeah, possibly 9. But they picked up it was round about 10 years old. Nobody picked up the rum cask. But in terms of that flavour. And I think it's a great thing when you do it blind. What leads the way is the flavour. That's all you have to go on. You're not swayed by Oloroso sherry. You're not swayed by tequila cask or big brand names. The liquid's in the glass, and you taste that. And I think it held up really well. Who else did we have in the lineup? We did a Speyburn 18-year-old full Oloroso, but a 19-year-old Blether, which is full bourbon. So it was up against some pretty heavy older drams and did really well.
Yeah, and our rum casts that we've had, that one as well. They're not they're not overly active. They're not too, despite the fact that it's rum agricole. It has a subtle effect and allows the spirit to shine. But then we'll put it in other things like Rioja or Barolo and things like that, where the cask really takes hold and the cask pushes that spirit character. No, it doesn't. You never completely lose the spirit character. I don't think any cask completely kills it stone dead. It'll always have its little part to play, but it's how much breathing room you give it. And we're quite open, and we're quite we'll let the cask take over if it's good. It still has to be good. We're not too precious when it comes to those limited editions. Our Warehouse One collection is our experimental collection. The dram I'm going to pour after this is as contemporary a Glen Moray as you'll find, because one, it's peated, and we only started peating in 2010. And two, it's Rioja. We'd never done a Rioja cask before. So it's a type of cask we've never used before, and it's a type of spirit that we have only been doing for a brief period of time. So we will let things move away from the traditional. And that's not something new. That's not just let's find a USP for the distillery. Because everybody wants, if you have to deal with marketing teams, it's what they're looking for. What makes us different? What can we talk about? Are we the smallest? Are we the largest? Are we the oldest? Are we the most rural, the most northerly, the most southerly? They're always looking for something. So that wasn't just a case of let's create some kind of USP. That was what we had in our warehouses. Under the Glenmorangie ownership, Glen Moray was their little laboratory, their little testing ground. They would experiment with it and play around with different things. But none of it had a direction. All of these casks were sitting there with no avenue in life. And I remember one of the first masterclasses I ever did in the early days, I called it Casks We Don't Know What We're Going to Do With. Because it was really interesting casks that we had in the warehouse that had no direction. They were just sitting there, and that blew my mind. Coming from a brand that everything was nailed down and everything had a direction, to a brand where it was like, yeah, we've got warehouses full of this stuff. So that was a legacy. That was an inheritance from the Glenmorangie era, and where we are now as a brand is we're in a position where we can take these things out. We've got a collection, the Warehouse One collection, where we can release these slightly more obscure cask styles, and Stephen has taken that on board and continued it, and he's just now always looking for something different. Maple was his something different. Rioja was his something different, just looking for something we've not tried before. And sometimes you kind of steal from other distilleries, because you'll never be first with everything. You want to be the Coca-Cola of the world and the first one to bring it out, because then you become more famous for it. But occasionally you look across enviously at other brands and say, right, what have they done that's quite interesting and different? And would that work for us? And we did it with our this year's Warehouse One releases. I'm not sure if I'm meant to say, but I'll say it anyway, because hopefully nobody's listening. You're not recording this. So this year's Warehouse One's going to be tequila casks. And we ordered tequila and mezcal, and that was because I had done a tasting panel with George Wills from Kilchoman. And I came back and was speaking to Stephen. I said that the Kilchoman and the mezcal and the tequila was outstanding. Such a great product. And if we can get something which comes close to that, then that would be amazing. So we order in some casks and we see how it goes. So that's us kind of looking across the board and tasting other products. But, Maple is us going, right, let's be first. Let's do something really fun and funky. And cider was that ilk. Cider was never us trying to be controversial. We didn't bring it out thinking we were doing anything particularly wrong, to be honest. We just thought it was a great whiskey, or great spirit drink, as it so turned out to be. And we brought it out, and it wasn't until it was Becky Paskin, who at the time she was writing for ScotchWhiskey.com, which was the kind of the biggest whiskey website, and she wrote an article on it, thinking that this might not be whiskey, and then suddenly the proverbial hit the fan, and emails started firing about, and we had to turn up to the SWA and say why we thought it was whiskey, and argue our case, and they said nope. And they basically said to us that, right, you can sell what you've bottled. It's a limited edition. It wasn't core range. But you can't promote it, you can't market it, and you can't include it in tastings. So I had a slate of tastings lined up where I had to pull cider cask out of it and replace it with something else. And ultimately what they did was they did the marketing for us. Because as soon as you tell a bunch of whiskey geeks that this is banned and you'll never be able to get it again, guess what? They all go and look for it and buy it. It was our fastest selling limited edition that we'd ever done. And we couldn't keep it on shelf. So that disappeared really quickly. So, and that kind of gave us the springboard for Warehouse One. That gave us that kind of opportunity to push back to the business and say, there's a market for these fun and funky and interesting and different casks. And at the time we called it Curiosity. We rebranded it Warehouse One because we felt that Curiosity kind of painted us in a bit of a corner. We ended up with, we were maybe releasing products that were curious to us, but not necessarily curious to the whiskey drinker. It was maybe casks that they had seen before from other distillers, but they'd not seen before from Glen Moray. So we rebranded it as Warehouse One because that's where we do keep all these interesting casks, and we now bring them out under that umbrella. So
I love that idea.
A great addition.
You've got this amazing warehouse. It's just a little bit like sort of Willy Wonka, kind of like experimental, like where all the secrets happen. You just open it up. I love that. It's quite a cool idea. It's a lot of fun. Have you tried the maple cask?
I have. It is so good. I love it. I've got. I've discovered. I think I have a sweet tooth. I didn't realize I had one. But and also, I'm not the biggest peated whiskey drinker. I'm Speyside born and bred, and I'll hold that to my heart. And given a selection of whiskies, if there's 4 or 5 whiskies and one of them's peated, that'll probably be my last one that I would go for. I don't dislike peated whiskey. It's just not my first choice. But the peated maple that we're going to release is amazing.
That sounds so beautiful. I love maple syrup, anything, and I love peat. So anything maple kind of flavored is that sounds really. So that's that. Sorry, did you say it was Speyside you're releasing that for?
Yes. So we've got a couple of events that will be the launch of it. It was actually delayed. It was meant to be released at the tail end of last year, but we, for certain reasons, it had to get delayed. So when we had to publish our events, we didn't call it out because we weren't 100% sure it would land on shelf. But I can say it publicly now, because we're pretty close to having it available and ready for the event. So it will be some of the events we have during Spirit Speyside, or pretty much most of the events we have, that will be included in the tastings, so that people can try it as a new product.
That's awesome. So maybe some of the guys in the chat are heading over for. I've missed the boat. I haven't booked anything for Spirit Speyside this year, and I'm probably too late for a lot of places. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to keep a lookout for if anybody releases extra tickets anywhere, because I've never done any of the Spirit Speyside events. So I need to get on board and do it. It's just transport is my thing, because none of my friends drink whiskey, so I have to drive myself, and then you're not drinking whiskey. I mean, you can still enjoy the experience and not drink. But
surely that's a plus if they don't drink whiskey.
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah, they can drive.
They can drive me. Yeah, I'm not sure they'd find it as interesting as I do, but yeah, I can maybe try and harangue them.
Well, I think we still have tickets available for the panel with Fraser, so you're more than welcome to come along to that one. If you can get a driver, and
you can get the train. And then on the way back, you show me where the station is.
It's about an hour walk to the station. So.
I'm actually going to look into that, because I did see it advertised the other day. I think it was maybe on your socials, or it was maybe Fraser's socials. I saw it. I thought, ooh, that looks interesting. But I thought I probably left it too late. But I'm going to look into that, actually.
That rum cask is just so good. It's probably my favourite of the 3 we've had tonight. Sorry, just to... had to jump in there. It's such
That's good.
I often roll my eyes when people say foam bananas in a tasting, but this has got that in abundance.
That's our fermentation. That foam bananas, like at certain points in the summer when the wind's blowing in the right direction and the weather's warm, because our washbacks are outside. For those of you who've not been to Glen Moray, it comes as a bit of surprise to people. But when they come and see it, if you're there in the summer, that foam banana aroma that comes from the estuary fermentation, it's lovely. It smells like I always call it a banana grove, but is that what we call it? We're a place where we grow bananas. We
So,
don't.
yeah. I guess because
Yeah.
you've got quite. Go on.
They don't grow bikes in biker groves, so I'm not sure if they grow banana groves.
I can't believe I let you finish that. I was like, yeah, go on, Mike. What were you going to say?
I was hoping you were going to jump in and just pretend that never happened. But
I was going to say, I guess because you've got, I mean, in terms of your fermentation, you're about 50 hours. That would be classed as the sort of the lower end, and you've got quite like a high gravity. So I guess you're picking out the really like the early stages of the esters, which is your big banana notes coming through. So it really explains why it would sit well in your rum cask, because it's really going to pick out those banana notes, which is pretty cool actually.
And 58 hours is now a long fermentation for us, because when I first started, we were fermenting for 40 hours. So we used to have, so part of the reason we've moved our washbacks outdoors was because we don't have much space indoors, and we used to have 4 washbacks. That's all we had the room for inside. So it was always a pinch point in production, and to keep the volume running through, they kept it short. So it was a 40-hour fermentation, 44 hours in the winter, 40 hours in the summer. So that was with our 4 washbacks that we had. We've now got 21 washbacks. So we've got that capacity and that space. So they've been moved outside. Aesthetically, it's not getting away from it. It looks industrial. It doesn't look traditional. And I also miss, you've taken many people around the distillery, but you love pushing their head into a washback. I don't get to do that anymore.
No, they're big. You'd have to get a ladder to do that. They're a big washback.
So don't get to do that. Little tip for people listening, that if a guide doesn't warn you that the smell is going to punch you in the nose, it's because you've been annoying through the tour.
Your head in there.
I would always warn people if they were nice, but if they were annoying, I would say, just shove your head in there. You're going to love it. So I can't do that anymore. So we've lost that element of it. Ultimately, aesthetically it looks different, but in terms of production, it doesn't change the process. We have to be aware of external temperatures. Obviously in the winter time is lagged, so it keeps the heat in, so the energy through the fermentation warms it up, and that's insulated. What we had to do last year was actually introduce cooling jackets, because in 2023, because your yeast typically will start to die away about 33 degrees, we had days in the summer where we were hitting beyond 33 degrees. So the yeast was dying before it had completed its job. So we've now got cooling jackets outside. So we have to be aware of the ambient temperature. But beyond that, it's the same process. It just looks quite industrial looking. So
I quite liked them though. They were kind of like big stainless steel sentinels. I quite liked it. It was quite futuristic. I think I know why you said why you fit in so well at Glen Moray, because everything's quite Star Warsy. It is quite futuristic. It's like if you took distillation to the moon, this is what it would look like. I love that.
We've kind of changed what we do, and we look different, and I like it that we are a little bit unique. It's funny, we like our marketing team always get annoyed because I don't like branded clothing. So I very rarely wear a Glen Moray jacket, or I know it's just when I say that. But from a work perspective, because I was like, it strips out the uniqueness and character. Let me wear my clothes. So I like things to be a little bit unique and individual, and I think Glen Moray, as a distillery, is very much that. And we kind of carve a little bit of a route for ourselves. When it comes to cask, when it comes to what we do and how we operate and how we look as a distillery, I think we do it slightly differently, and it's fun and it's funky and it's good to be around. I enjoy it.
100%, definitely.
I'm going to jump on to the chat. We've got quite a few comments. I want to come back to Scott Matheson, who's watching on YouTube, is asking. We're talking about the rules, and obviously Scotch is governed pretty strictly. He's asking, what do you think about the outcry on England having different single malt rules? Have you seen?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife, who has no interest in whiskey whatsoever, she asked me about it the other day, and my response was much ado about nothing. Whether that's the case, I don't know. I think people are grown up enough to know that Scotch whiskey and English whiskey, there'll be different whiskies, and they should be. What I love at the moment about the spirits industry and whiskey in particular is gone are the days where people just try and copy Scotch. The Japanese distilleries for a long time, all they tried to do was copy Scotch. Now we've got brands like Paul John, like Milk and Honey, and Owl in Belgium, where they're embracing their regional identity, embracing their environmental and climatic changes and influences on their spirit. And I think the English distillers need to do the same, embrace what can make them different, what can make them stand out. And what is now quite a crowded and busy market. Don't just try and copy Scotch. Make up your own rules, make up your own guidance, and do your own. It's whether there are consumers out there that are maybe not educated enough that just see the word single malt and get confused. I don't know. I don't know if these are the guys that are going out finding a small craft English distillery and buying it mistakenly. I don't think that's a big issue.
I think you're 100. But I agree with you 100% in that, But I think what we'll see is Scotch. The word Scotch could become more prominent off the back of it. People talk about Scotch rather than single malt. I think we might need to, say, well, this is Scottish single malt. The word Scotch is indicative to that. But I don't see it being like you say, we've got single malt American whiskey, single malt Swedish whiskey, single malt Finnish whiskey, and nobody. I think it's because it's so, even Welsh, Penderyn had the single malt Welsh whiskey, and it's never been an issue until they've come out with these rules. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a stir. Yeah, unless it's political, which it seems to be at the moment. There seems to be
there's a bit of a knee-jerk response to it, I think, wasn't it? Before everybody started saying, "Wait a minute, you've got, like, just as you said, you've got single malt American whiskey, single malt Swedish whiskey. Like, why is it just the English whiskey?" I think the English whiskey industry is still quite new. So I don't really think there's any English brands that are so well established that a consumer would confuse an English brand with a Scottish brand yet. I mean, maybe down the line, but I don't think there's a blurring of boundaries right now when their industry is still so young. I think it just seemed to grab the headlines pretty quick, and it just became pretty viral pretty quick and divided opinion pretty quick before anybody really had thought of an appropriate response to what the actual situation was. But definitely got everyone talking for a minute.
Scott followed up with saying he kind of got the impression it was a weird lack of confidence from the Scottish side that there was this kickback. But I don't think the industry itself has really had a big kickback, has it? It's not like SWA have come out and it
was more of a newspaper headline that kind of set it all off. I can't remember, was it the Herald or something?
The Herald or
worded it. Yeah, it was a bit of a sort of controversial headline, maybe, wasn't it? That kind of implied more than it was. But
I was just looking over my shoulder because I've got a bottle of English on the shelf here, just to see what they had on their label, if there was anything, if there were, single malt whiskey. The rules themselves, they're not published on the packaging. So if they create their own set of guidance and rules and they follow that, then it's not, they are using the word single malt whiskey on their packaging just now. So I don't think it's a big issue.
No, definitely not.
Give an excuse to open mouth. bottle here. I'm going to do a cat here. I'm trying to open a bottle.
A lot of noise. Is this how much noise I usually make when I'm trying to get into one?
I'm actually unwrapping it. There we go. So yeah, I've got the lakes.
Oh, that's a cool box.
That is a nice looking package.
The number 9. Part of the Founders Club.
Is the Lakes, were they the one that took home World Whisky of the Year? Like, was it last year, the year before, an English whiskey took home? Was it World Whisky of the Year or something? Or is it Cotswolds maybe, or Lakes, or?
I think you might be right, actually. Yeah.
Jeremy's on. Jeremy will know. But I'm sure.
I think it was the English. These guys.
The guy.
I think it was their sherry cask. I think.
Okay.
Memory.
I knew it was an English one. I'm not big on my English brands yet, but I don't know. I suppose they're not written and talked about much up in Scotland yet. But I haven't tried any English whiskey. But I'll maybe have to give that a go.
Yeah. All this says was the Founders single malt whiskey made in England. So it's not English single malt. It's single malt whiskey made in England. Bob Sanders saying it was the English whiskey sherry cask that won.
Yeah, that seemed to ring a bell with me. I thought it was the English sherry cask.
Jeremy's asking, he's on Facebook, he was asking, how long was your Glen Moray in the maple cask?
2 years. So we took delivery of 4 casks. We finished, one of them was a finish with our non-peated spirit. One was a finish with our peated spirit. And the other 2 we filled with new make for a full maturation. So the 2 full maturations, they're still tucked away. So we're going to release the 2 finishes this year, Spirit of Speyside. So the peated and the non-peated. So single cask, distillery editions. So they'll only be available at Glen Moray.
Nice. Have you ever had a whiskey in a cask that hasn't worked that you thought, Christ, I know what I'm going to do with this?
Yes, but it wasn't so much our spirit. I think it was our approach, our handling. We had some beer casks, which they were delivered to the distillery and they sat out for a little while before we filled it. So the residual beer had actually soured a little bit. Didn't work. And Fino doesn't work very well with our non-peated spirit. Okay. But when we put peated spirit in it, it works amazingly well.
I think Fino and peat seem to be quite good companions because they've both got that dry kind of herbalness to them. Because I love the Kilchoman Fino. I think that works so. It's one of my favorites because it just reminds me of like the sort of whole macher, grassy, dry West Coast kind of. I love it. It just works, whether it's psychological or whether it's a mixture of the both. But yeah, I would agree with that.
No, I'd agree. I think peat and Fino works really. I think last week when I was listening to you guys chatting to Antea, there was a big chat about sherry. I was learning. I didn't know as much about sherry as Antea did. She was waxing lyrical, and I think I threw in the chat that I think peat and Fino is a great combination.
Oh, you did? That's right. Because I remember seeing it and thinking, yes, he is right. It's a fab combination. Yeah. Fino is not a sherry that we see used that much, but yeah, I think it's under. Do you not think it's because Fino's one of those ones that's not really dark color? We've spoken about this before, Mike. Like people look at sherry and on you go.
I touched it on my blog that I put out yesterday. You know, when people think of a sherry bomb, they think of that big color. You know, you look at that. This kind of, people want to see. They think sherry, that's what it is, and they want chocolate, they want raisins, they want figs. So if you give them a Fino or a Manzanilla or something that's the drier side of sherry, and it looks, it's probably the Fino would give you a similar color to that, almost a bourbon-esque American oak kind of color. You tell somebody that's sherry, immediately. Just the way we think, as an ambassador, I'm not sure how you are, Iain. How many times we tell people don't buy with your eyes, but we always do. We always, it's built into our subconscious to say, actually, that looks really dark. I'll pick that bottle up. You might not buy it, but you'll pick the bottle up to have a look at it.
Yeah, I've been in this industry now for 20 odd years. I should know better, but I'm a sucker for a dark colored whiskey. I'll fall into that trap every single time.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the
Yeah,
opposite,
so
but I'm obviously doing the buy with your eyes on the opposite side because I don't like a heavy sherry finish. So I'll do the opposite and look for the lightest whiskey. And again, that's me judging. So I'm not any better than anybody else, to be honest. But like an example of that would be I posted up a photograph of a 1979 first fill Oloroso Glengarry on my socials the other day. And I've never had such a good reaction to a photograph before. And nearly every comment was, wow, look at the color of that, because it's as dark as, as dark as the wood
Cool.
itself. It's a banging whiskey, but it's mainly the color that people spot. And it's a warehouse picture, so it's always going to be a bit darker in the warehouse anyway. But
I saw that picture. That was a cracking picture, actually. It was a good
thanks.
shot. Yes.
It was just a lucky one. I just done a tasting in the warehouse, and they'd all headed off with a colleague to go up to do something else in a different location. And somebody had left their glass sitting. I was like, and the light was shining through the window, just the right angle. I popped it on top of the cask. I was like, that's quite cute. I'll just take a wee picture. But yeah, it's just one of those wee moments, isn't it? But yeah, that picture was mental. People were like messing, like, oh my God, you've launched a new cask. Like, no, it's not a new cask. It's been here for quite a long time. Come and buy it, please. But yeah.
Who left that amount of whiskey in their glass?
Oh, well. Okay, so I did add a little bit to it for the picture.
Bit of artistic license. You're allowed that.
It's peated. It's peated as well, and the group that I had were not a big fan of peated spirits, so it wasn't their favorite one. But
not a big peat, is it? It's kind of a good age on it, so it's kind of more that musky, earthy kind of note than the peat, isn't it?
I don't think I've ever had it. Are you talking Glengarry peated?
Yeah, anything distilled pre-1995 is peated, so it's quite a light.
Yeah.
About sort of 8 to 10 ppm, but come over to the distillery and I'll sort you out with a wee peated Glengarry.
I've never been. I remember back in my old Threshers days that Glengarry was one of our biggest selling single malts because it was the closest to Aberdeen. It was, So
oh my gosh.
I've sold a lot.
Honestly, coming past, like, you know where I am.
Yes.
Drop me a note. You can come. I'm always there. Coming past, and could have got the malt floors. We're direct fired. Like, coming past, I'll show you the distillery. You're always welcome.
You're not an hour away from the train station, are you?
I mean, but you probably would be.
Yeah, I was going to say, if actually knowing where it is, you probably are.
If you set off walking now, you'll get to us within at least.
The first time, so I don't know if you know about Meldrum Sports, Iain. It's like an annual fair at Old Meldrum, and it used to be a haven for underage drinkers. So we would always go over in the marquee, and you just get smashed. And it took me 3 hours that night to walk home. It's one of my most vivid underage drinking memories. Was walking home from Old Meldrum, walking through a farmer's.
That's like
it's not
4.5 miles.
Yeah, it's not far. It took me about 3 hours. And nowadays, I probably average about 15 minutes to a mile. So it should literally take an hour, if that. But I remember walking home.
It seemed to involve you walking around and around drunk.
Yeah.
Last week, listening to you guys chatting to Antea, I learned a lot about sherry. This week, I'm learning that Mike is a slow drunk walker.
You are 100% right. And I've got this terrible habit nowadays, and I did it to my friend when we were down in Edinburgh the other week, is just going home or ghosting, just saying, I don't want to be here anymore, I'm going back to my digs. And I left Keenan.
You're one of those. You just disappear.
Terrible. I think it's an age thing. I'm getting terrible for it. I'll just walk out of a pub and go home if I can. But I'm in Old Meldrum, so I can't just. Well, I did. I walked home, but I remember walking through a field, and there was sheep. Do you know how sheep just stare at you when you walk past them?
No.
And I started having this argument with a sheep because it was staring at me, and I was like, "What the fuck are you looking at?" And getting it right from a farmer for shouting at his sheep. So that was one of my childhood memories. I don't know why I thought of that when it came up. Oh yeah, so it's about an hour walk from the train station in Inverurie, which would be your your local train station.
You're not doing much to break down the stereotype of the kind of Aberdeenshire and cheap situation here.
No, no. No bull was touched. It was.
Are you sure you were just shouting at them? Yeah.
There was resistance.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. God, it'd be 25 years ago, if not more.
Not such a good road to walk on anymore. It's quite a busy road between Old Meldrum and Elgin.
Well, I think that's why I took the field.
Safer route. But yeah. Well, if you're ever up in Aberdeen or over my way, definitely pop and pass and we'll show you around the distillery.
100%. It's one I have not done, so I really have to take it off. So.
Especially since we've got the Cornelli connection as well. Obviously, Dr. Cornelli Maduli was Glengarry's distillery manager and left us to go over to Glen Moray, who's now left to go back to his first love, which is the maltings. But yeah, he is an absolute legend and hilarious because he just wears his ear set and pretends he's on Teams meetings all the time, but he's not. He just does it to avoid talking to people, which is absolutely fantastic. Life lessons there, people. If you can't be arsed talking to people, put your headset on and pretend you're talking to somebody on Teams. But yeah, very clever.
Every couple of weeks we do a site walk around just to make sure that everything was looking neat and tidy and that. And every other distillery manager walked around, they always took a notepad and wrote things down. But Cornelli was just everything was up there. Yeah. Didn't forget.
He's such an intelligent man, isn't he?
He is. We started calling him Dr. K at work because Russell, who used to do this chat before it became successful. I'm joking, Russell. So Russell confused the name and said, "Oh, well," he was so excited. He's like, "Oh my God, we're going to meet Kanye at your work next week." I'm like, "Kanye?" And he's like, "Yeah, your manager." I'm like, "Cornelli?" He's like, "Oh yes, who's Kanye?" I'm like, "You're confusing Kanye West." Cornelli Maduli. So ever since, and Cornelli loved that. So I was like, ever since, like after that, he was Dr. K after that. But yeah.
A few years ago, that would have been a compliment. Now I'm not so sure.
No, not so much now.
Yeah.
Not so much. Yeah. Dr. K is definitely a better man than Kanye. Is that a new dram we've got there?
Yes, jumped on to.
I am not keeping up. I'm on my second whiskey. What are you on?
Despite my chat about not being a big peated fan, I do love our new. This is our warehouse one, peated Rioja, red wine, peat, and I think I touched on this being possibly the most contemporary of Glen Moray's, certainly of what we've got out at the moment, because peat, not something we've been doing for long. 2010 we started, and then, as I say, the Rioja cask. 11 years old, 9 years in bourbon, 2 years finished in Rioja, 58.8 cask strength. It's just that nice balance. I like peat when it's balanced, when it's not the central focal point of everything in your glass, when there's something else to kind of distract to some extent or to push the peat to one side. And I think the Rioja does that wonderfully. Just adds a nice, rich, dark fruit, red wine influence, which sits well with the earthy Aberdeenshire peat, your direction. So
yeah, I can imagine the peat would go really well with those tannins you get in the Rioja. I love a big, heavy Rioja because it's really tannin rich and quite like so kind of oaky vanilla vibe. So I'd imagine that would work quite well with your kind of Aberdeenshire peat. It sounds like a good match. Yeah,
I was so close to picking that one up at the shop today for tonight as well. I was just like, we'll go by, and then I noticed that we had a full bottle of what was our shop exclusive, so I grabbed that one instead. I thought 4 might be too much to push into, but
it's Thursday evening. It's almost the weekend.
I know.
You've got this Rioja one at the shop.
Yes, we've got the peated and the unpeated. You've got an unpeated warehouse one as well in Rioja, don't you?
Yeah, so it's funny because it's the first time. Normally we do 2 or 3 warehouse ones in a year. Typically they're quite wide and varied when we do a batch in a year. So not last year, but 2023s were a Manzanilla, a Montiado, and Oloroso. No, that's mixing up years. We had the Oloroso. We had the confused. We're 3 drams in. I've forgotten what we had back 2 years ago. Anyway, we normally don't keep it to the same cask, is what I'm trying to say. And in this case, we did. So we've got the peated and the non-peated. However, they're hugely different because the non-peated is fully matured in Rioja. So the way I describe them in tastings is that the non-peated one, that screams Rioja. It's had a full 9 years, full maturation. The Rioja dominates, it takes hold, it just really kind of is at the forefront of the whiskey. With the peated Rioja, because you've got that added extra dimension of peat, and then on top of that, it's finished. So it's only had a couple of years in the Rioja. So the bulk of the maturation is bourbon, so you've got a flavour build coming in there extra. The Rioja is slightly whispered. It just kind of hints at what the Rioja can do. So they're both extremely different whiskies, despite the fact they both have that same Rioja wording on the label.
That's pretty cool. Definitely have to give that a go. So I explained to Iain before I started the chat that I couldn't find my charger because my son was using my laptop. I now need to go and find my charger, so I am just going to nip off for 2 seconds. I think I know where it is, so I'm just going to go and track it down. Excuse me.
You know, when you come back, it's going to be all Star Wars and football.
That's fine. Do all that while I'm not here. I'm going to be as quick as I can. 2 seconds.
No worries. Bob Sanders just put a comment on saying that he's having the Glen Moray Signet before he picks something peated to end the night with. So he's having another wee dram of Glen Moray. Being a former Glen Moray owned, were you pretty gutted to see that they managed to get Han Solo in for the adverts?
I did, yeah. It kind of it felt missing a Wookiee in there, so it was like, yeah, I get bitter at these things when I see a brand or a whiskey doing something that I wish we'd done. So that was very cool. And also Glen Moray Signet, I'm bitter about that because that is a phenomenal whiskey.
That's the chocolate malt, isn't it?
It's such a great whiskey. I love it. In fact, they released the Signet Reserve, which was meant to be upgraded, but for me, the Signet still wins out. I think it's outstanding. It's such a great, and it's one where if I'm at a whiskey show and we've got any of our marketing team who are maybe kind of new to the team and like recommend something that's not Glen Moray, I'll push them in Signet direction because I just think it's outstanding.
Yeah, I really enjoy it as well. It's not what we don't have a huge Glen Moray range, to be honest. We don't get many people. We used to. Our main supplier kind of was Gordon MacPhail, and now they've kind of really focused on their own. So we don't get much of things like the offshoots. We get the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old now it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, Glen Moray is just a great drama. And I did love the adverts with, it's just Harrison being Harrison, isn't it? He's just grumpy and just looks good in a coat though.
He does. He rocks it. He rocks it. So it's cool. I love to see distilleries kind of pushing boundaries and doing these kind of things that are slightly different. You need deep.
Rocking with the stars, isn't he? That was Beyonce last year and Harrison Ford this year.
If anybody can mingle, then Bill can do that. But here, you need deep pockets to do it. The big brands can do it because I'm sure Harrison Ford doesn't come cheap. So it's a playground for the big brands to play in. I'd love to see us get some celebrity endorsements. Actually, would I? I don't know. As long as it was a cool celebrity, as long as it was Harrison Ford, I'd be quite happy.
Yeah. Or Mark Hamill, maybe.
One up. Yeah.
It would be, it's and it has to. I think they've done it really well, because they've really honed in on Harrison Ford and what his persona is, rather than have it all glitz and glam. And I think they've done it quite classy, and it's not cheapening the brand in any way or it's not a it's a celebrity endorsement, but it's not done like a
it's not done just in the I'm sitting here with a glass and I'll smile and you can take some pictures and that's your advert. And it's funny because I've been watching Shrinking. Have you seen that series on Apple TV with Harrison Ford in it?
No, I
It
haven't.
almost it feels more like that character than it does anything
Right.
else. So it's kind of almost translatable from something I've been watching him in recently. So it's really good. It's done well, and yeah, I'm just jealous. I see Scott in the chat there. That what about Ewan McGregor? But I think Aaron have pretty much got him tied up.
Yeah, he bought one of the first casks, didn't he?
Yeah, he filled a cask, and I think they've bottled it fairly recently. I was chatting to Fred at Lag, and he was talking that they're putting his cask out there. So
yeah, so that's Han Solo and Obi-Wan Jr. What Star Wars character would you have if you could get one in?
You gotta get him. I've loved a Boba Fett bottling. I think that would have worked.
Yeah,
I think we could maybe stretch the Jar Jar Binks or something like that.
Oh no.
Have I just come back in time for Star Wars, or have you just all been Star Wars?
We were saving it for you.
We're waiting for you to come back.
We're actually chatting the Harrison Ford Glen Moray tie-up.
Yeah, he's a bit of a cool dude, isn't he?
He is.
He's like 82 or 83 or something. He's a lot older than you think.
Yeah, he's like, I think he's like just like pretty classic, like kind of aged very well. But what I love about the whole Harrison Ford kind of adverts is the fact it reminds me of how I fell in love with whiskey, which was the original advert when the guy sits down with a glass of Glen Moray and then it transports him to like the Glen. He's sitting there like in this beautiful Scottish Glen in this big leather armchair. I totally fell in love with that whole marketing concept and then fell in love with the whiskey off of that. And I love how they've kind of gone full circle and kind of gone back to that concept. With Harrison Ford, they've obviously got a bigger budget than most other distilleries, but yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I think it's been tastefully done. If you're doing a celebrity endorsement, I think they've done it quite tastefully. Yes, it's a man. It doesn't always need to be a man. It could have been, sometimes they could use women, but whatever. There's worse guys that could have chosen.
We could have had Princess Leia in her gold bikini. Yeah.
I don't think that would have gone down well. I think that might have caused some issues.
It would have been controversial. It might have been controversial.
Especially with Carrie Fisher being the age she is now. It might not have kind of...
Well, she's passed away now, so I don't think we'd be able to get her on board.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, never mind the age she is.
Yeah.
The fact she's dead.
It's the alive she is the problem.
Minor detail.
I didn't know she died. Was she like was she the same age as Harrison? Was she like right about the same age or as Harrison Ford, or
she passed away that horrible year that we had where we lost David Bowie, we lost did we not lose Muhammad Ali and Carrie Fisher? It was that year where a lot of big names passed away, sadly.
Yeah, I think she probably was about ages with Harrison, certainly within that kind of. But she probably had a little bit more of a lifestyle to wear her on a little bit quicker, I suppose.
Yeah.
But she was fun. Yeah, she had the little cameos in the Scream movies and things like that. She was in the Big Bang as well. I don't know if you've seen her. Do you watch Big Bang Theory?
Yes. Yeah.
She comes out and goes at James Earl Jones with a shotgun.
To your question, it's like if money was no object, I'd love to sit down and with our marketing team and see who they thought was a good fit for Glen Moray, who we could pick as a celebrity endorsement.
Fraser, we did this question a couple of weeks ago with Neil Strachan and Fraser. We were speaking about with your whiskey talks. we were speaking, like he was putting in suggestions of like which celebrity would suit which brand, and he came up with a great one for Glenkeane. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a fun concept. Like who would be your celebrity kind of endorsement for a brand? Like who would be the right fit? It's like you think there'd be an obvious answer, but it makes you think. Like who would be the right fit for a whiskey brand? It's definitely a fun question.
If you look at it purely from a sales point of view right now, to go back to Taylor Swift, if you could get a picture with Taylor Swift with a bottle of your brand, that would shift bottles. That would move bottles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people would be washing their hair with that stuff. They really would.
But in terms of a fit, in terms of what would sit well with the brand and what wouldn't be just shoehorning somebody in for the sake of selling bottles, that would be a little bit more of a sit down exercise and have a conversation. That would be a kind of fun thing to do.
It would. I think you're right. I think it would be fun, but it would be that thing you would really have to sit and think about it. I don't think it's an obvious one because we've played around with silly questions like this before, like pairing off whiskey and crisps or pairing off like whiskey and bands was one thing we did. Yeah. And it is a really fun chat, but some of them are a bigger picture. Like, wait, who would? Because the whiskey and bands one that really took off, and we're actually just sitting really pondering for probably longer than we should have done on a school night. But
I was out for a walk with the dogs last night, and I was thinking about today in this chat, and I was trying to think of a brand that would be Star Wars, and the only thing I could think of was Macallan. The reason being that, the heyday of the 70s and 80s, and now we're just getting churned out lots of kind of spin-offs that aren't quite at the same quality. There's a new following and everyone's kind of loving it, loving the idea of it. And it just kind of, I thought, Star Wars and Macallan kind of would be a nice fit. Maybe that's controversial, but.
Well, plus they've got the really cool kind of visitor centre, which is very like futuristic and modern, like the sort of space hub, space, I don't know the terminology, space centre of like the whiskey world, I guess. So I'm really trying with my Star Wars chat. I'm trying so hard.
Like appreciate. It's your chat about bands and that's one thing I've always wanted to crack and I've never managed to sort out. It's like I love music and I love whiskey, and I'd love to do a music related whiskey tasting, but I can't come up with a way to make it work other than just having people sit and drink whiskey and listen to music, which doesn't really work as a whiskey tasting. Is how do you crack that connection with music and whiskey? Because when I'm drinking, and if I'm at home, my wife doesn't drink whiskey, so if I'm drinking, I'll put on some music, and that connection is solid. But how do you bring that to people? Yeah. That's difficult. It's such a individual thing.
It's so personal, and I always say, I haven't said it for a while actually, is the two industries that I think should be more connected to each other is whiskey and music, because it's, you listen to something depending on your mood, depending on your company, depending on the weather, what kind of day you've had, and it's exactly the same with whiskey. And it's, there's so much variety out there. Everyone's got their own choice as well. And you can't, I'll slag off music that I don't like, but, ultimately you've got to respect the talent of a musician, whether they're playing songs that you don't like or not. And it's the same with whiskey, probably because I'm in the industry, I very rarely slag off. Maybe I'll dig at Macallan like I've just done, but that's about it. And it's so individual, so private. To bring a group into that is very hard. Yeah. And I have looked at it as well, like yourself, Iain. It's bringing a music theme. Yeah, you say, well, I've picked this song with this dram because. And then the song's only like 4 minutes, so you're expecting people to neck a dram in 4 minutes to move on to the next one as well. It's like, how do you do that?
The one solution I came up with this year, which I loved the idea of, but I was told by everybody at the distillery, you are not doing that, was get a brand ambassador karaoke evening, where the brand ambassador had to
yes,
pour a dram, get on stage and sing a song. And it was actually Emma at the distillery who I mentioned earlier. She was like, you are not getting up and singing a song. And I was like, I want to do a karaoke evening. But no, I was told that's not happening. So yeah, next year maybe. We'll maybe revisit it, the Glen Moray karaoke night.
That would be cool. That would be fun.
That would be a lot of fun, actually. You should definitely do that. Like,
Kat,
oh my God, your 20th...
Are you on board? Are you on board?
20th anniversary. We're all coming to celebrate your anniversary.
Karaoke.
With, yeah.
What song would you sing for Glengarry, Kat?
Oh, you can't put me in the spot with things like this. I need to pre-plan. Like, I don't know. I need to think about that because, like, yeah, because we're quite retro heritage, but we're also quite like forward thinking. Do you know what it was? It's got to be. Go on.
I was going to say you're quite twee and traditional in your packaging and the distillery as well.
So we are. So this is my thinking, and also because I'm obsessed with this band, but because we're quite twee Scottish, like traditional, but we're also forward thinking because we're going back to direct firing and floor malting. We're like a modern Scottish trad band. My favorite band in the world is Nightworks, which is a modern Scottish trad band. So I really think we might be Nightworks, and I could get them live at the distillery if they hadn't split up this year. But yeah, we can maybe go.
It's like the Carrie Fisher all over again. It's like, yeah.
I know.
We'd get them if they were still around.
If they hadn't, I mean, they're not dead, but yeah, they did split up this year. But yeah, maybe it would be like a sort of trad band, like a modern Scots trad band, which I'm totally here for because that's my vibe. So yeah, maybe that sort of vibe. That'd be fun. I do think our Malt Barns would be the most awesome venue for like a sort of a big trad band night in a ceilidh. But everyone keeps telling me health and safety is an issue. Health and safety gets in the way of so much fun. So yeah, I'm not sure it's going to happen, but how awesome would that? I mean, like distilleries are great venues for any sort of like event. Like they're so atmospheric, especially if something like a Malt Barns. Like, you know, the lighting's fantastic. Like, oh, they're just awesome venues. But
my first trip to Glen Moray was the whiskey dinner, the opening dinner at the Speyside Festival in 2016.
I think 17 was. 17? Yeah, I think it was 16 or 17. Rings a bell.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was in the warehouse or one of the warehouses. It had been converted into a kind of restaurant for the dinner. It was absolutely amazing. And I've been to Glen Moray about 12 times, but I've never done the tour yet, so I need to get on the tour.
That's what we're about. Come and see us. We'll take you around. We'll show you. I'll not be able to stick your head in a wash bag because we've already discussed it.
I'll bring a ladder.
Yeah, no, come and see us and we'll take you on the tour. Absolutely. Yeah, we had a great space. We had a venue space. It was the old cooperage at the distillery, which was an old Dunnage warehouse, which they I don't know why it was taken out of use. But it was emptied as a warehouse and became our cooperage where we repaired and maintained casks. And then we kind of that side of things moved out of use at the distillery, and we turned it into a venue space. And it was great. It was like you were saying, Kat, it was so atmospheric. It was just the perfect place to have a party and a dinner, and we had ceilidhs. But because it didn't have toilets, we couldn't get a permanent license because it didn't tick all the boxes for licensed premises. So we were applying for occasional licenses every so often, but the council eventually came back to us and says, this is more than occasional. If you want this space, you need to convert it properly, and the money wasn't there. So it just kind of fell into rack and ruin, which was a shame because it was such a great venue. It was such a great space.
It It's such a shame. Like, we've had couples come and do like pre-wedding photographs in the distillery just because it's like A, because they're like whiskey fans, and B, because it's just like, you know, these buildings are 230 plus years old. Like, you know, people pay to go to castles to get those types of pictures. So yeah, no, it's very, very cool. But yeah, maybe so Glengarry itself used to have, like yourselves, used to rent out a conference space. So above the visitor centre was a genuine rented out conference area, and people would either use it for like, you know, work related things or weddings or all sorts of things. But yeah, not anymore. It's now my office. So yeah, not a conference space anymore.
It's a massive office. Yeah, it's this cat with this massive 3-piece suite.
I insist on it. I've got a huge conference table and clocks with, you know, all the sort of world times on it. And like, that's not the case at all. It's literally a storeroom with 2 desks in it. But yeah, it's crazy the way that like we've got all these beautiful spaces that maybe don't always get used in the way that we would hope they would. But it's difficult as well though, because a lot of them are, you know, like what you call listed buildings and stuff. So like, you know, we're kind of limited in what we can do with some of the spaces, and health and safety as well. You know, it's a production site, you know, it's like highly combustible, dangerous production area. So we are quite limited in what we can do health and safety wise with a lot of these buildings. So it can be frustrating, but it also makes sense.
It's funny, this year, the Spirit of Speyside, the opening dinner is actually at the McDonald Resort in Aviemore, and that's because it's outgrown distilleries. No distillery has got the capacity or the space, or like you say, just the dealing with health and safety and everything attached to these things. So yeah, it's a shame because, you know, it's a fair trek away from most of the distilleries.
That's a good old trek up the road, to be honest. That's not their closest venue, but nice area to go to.
Yeah, great area. And you know, I think it's a good sign. I think it's not a bad thing, because it's the fact that it's outgrown the distilleries. It's become such a big event. You know, they needed somewhere that can host 350 people, and obviously there's not many distilleries with that kind of capacity or that space to do it. So a victim of its own success to some extent in the terms of moving it away from Speyside, but in terms of it being successful, we can't complain. It means that Spirit Speyside is popular and big.
That's true, but also if you do get rid of that extra malt bins, we now have a venue of your big ugly black shed.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to Ross, but I don't think he'll be on board with that. We'll find out. We'll give it a go.
Glen Moray, the hub of Spirit Speyside. You could be the beating heart of Spirit Speyside. You're in Elgin. You are literally the beating heart of Spirit Speyside.
Yeah, Elgin is, you know, Elgin. Like I don't believe Dufftown is the capital of Speyside. It's very much Elgin.
No,
it's got to be
100%.
Yeah,
I find it hilarious. So when people come to Glengarry, they think it's like they can't believe they've discovered a distillery in the middle of a town. Like, I had no idea this was here. I just find it quite funny. Like, yeah, of course, like, yeah, we're on Distillery Road. We're here. I had the same experience when I came to find Glen Moray for the first time. I was like, I've never been to Glen Moray. Let's go and find Cornelly. And like, yeah, it's like literally in the middle of this massive, well, not massive, but this beautiful old cathedral town. And you have to find this like sort of a semi-industrial distillery production site behind these beautiful sandstone buildings at the back of this town. Like, I had no idea you were tucked in there, but it's quite fun discovering you guys.
Yeah, well, the kind of the houses that you drive past to come into the distillery, that was land owned by the distillery. We sold that back in the 1980s, and that kind of ultimately the town has moved out to meet us. So the town has enveloped us more than us being in the town. So you know, it does. A lot of people say, you know, didn't expect to find you through a housing, not estate, but through houses. But you know, we've embraced that. We've got the cafe and the coffee shop. We like to kind of be a bit of a hub to the community, and it keeps us open all year round. You know, in the middle of winter, the coffee shop's busy with locals, which I think it gives it a lovely feel. It's a nice kind of community feel to what we do.
It's so Scottish as well, though. Like, where else can you go in the world where you can go for a coffee in a distillery. Like that's normal to us, but like for people coming into Scotland, like that must be insane to them. Like you can go get a coffee and a Maltese or Tiffin in a distillery that turns out 8 million litres of whiskey a year. Like it's kind of cool.
You're sat there, you can have a tasting flight, you can have a bowl of broth, you can enjoy a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea and a scone, freshly baked that morning. So yeah, it's it's very Scottish. It's embracing that Scottish heritage. We've kind of moved away. I remember when I first came to Glen Moray back in 2005, the visitor centre had just opened a year, and the decor was tartan everywhere. The curtains were tartan, the cushions were tartan, everything was tartan. And I was like, I kind of wanted to push against this kind of heather and weather approach to Scotland, and move away from the tartan, to the point where we took it all away. And I'm now kind of looking at it going, maybe we should add a bit of tartan. Maybe we should bring a little bit of it back.
Yeah, there is that kind of balance. Again, it's so much about balance, is finding how much is shortbread tin over the top and how much is just enough to just put on there as a wee signature nod. Yeah.
Without being too cliche.
Yeah, I don't have a Glengarry box, but you guys do a really nice mix of it. You've got the buff and it looks.
I'm glad.
It looks healthy.
Yeah, I'm glad you went with buff and not brown. It's a difficult balance. I don't know how to describe that without upsetting anybody, but it is a difficult balance because you do want that nod to tradition, but you see all these amazing new brands with these fantastic, brand stories and cool distilleries, and you kind of think, oh, like, are we a bit fuddy-duddy? But people come into our distillery and like, oh, I love the fact that, you're not like modern, you're not like, like sort of tourist kind of, I was going to say Diageo. There's nothing wrong with Diageo. We always throw Diageo out like they're the monster of the whiskey world, but they're not. But they're very sleek, which is cool. I love the Johnny Walker experience. I love a lot of their distilleries. Like, I'm not slagging off Diageo, but people are like, oh, it's nice to see you guys. Like, you've stuck to your roots. And sometimes I go into other distilleries, I'm like, oh, I wish we were a bit more sleek. I wish we were a bit more like, a bit like them. But yeah, it's just trying to find, I don't know if it's like being one thing or the other. I think it's trying to find your place. As you said, Iain, as well, it's like trying to find where you are and where you fit in, and then just owning that. You don't need to be one or the other. You just need to find what you are and just own that and be that. Like, yeah, it's just, it's difficult because a lot of people come into this country as a tourist and want the tartan, the whiskey, the bagpipes. And that's cool. And a lot of people don't. So yeah, there's so many distilleries. There is something for everyone. So you just own what you are. And if it's not for you, then they'll find what they want somewhere else. Yeah.
And without being too pretentious about it, ultimately the liquid is what's important.
100% though. Yes, that's it. Exactly.
As long as your liquid is good, there are brands out there that their liquid is phenomenal, their packaging is garbage, but I don't care. I'm quite happy the whiskey's good. But ultimately, you need to stand out on shelf. It's like we were talking about earlier in terms of color. We do buy with our eyes. We do look at what's on the shelf, and if something looks great from a packaging perspective, you are drawn to it. So it's finding that balance, and I think as long as that doesn't supersede the quality of liquid, which it can happen. The marketing can take over what you're trying to do as a brand, so you become more of a brand than you do a product. But we are selling a product. The product has to be front and center. I think what we do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would agree with that completely. Yeah. I'm a sucker for a pretty bottle and a pretty box. But
I'd just say,
yeah. But yeah, to me, it's like I just like trying different whiskies. I judge them on their merit, but I can see if you're not into whiskey and you're wanting to buy a gift, or if you've come to Scotland for the first time, a box or a bottle or a dark coloured whiskey is going to be the first thing that draws you in. But there's enough choice out there that there's something for everyone.
And to go to what we were talking about as well, just to kind of tie everything together, it's like that kind of celebrity endorsement, that marketing tie-up. The only bottle of Johnny Walker I've got in my cupboard over there is the Blade Runner Special Edition, because I love Blade Runner, and it was whiskey in one of my favorite movies coming together. I bought the great Game of Thrones series because I loved Game of Thrones. It was a great TV series, and that
I can do this one. I can't do Star Wars. I can't do Blade Runner, but I love Game of Thrones. I can do this
amazing.
one.
And I was like, when they brought out the Game of Thrones here, I was like, you are bringing my two loves at this moment in time. Such an amazing TV program with whiskey.
Do the books. Have you read the books?
I started, but I ended up giving up because the TV series took over.
I did as well.
I read the first two books, and then
But do you not think that he got well, that too, but I think he got a bit lost in the books because he literally forgot characters and plots, like literally halfway through. And I got so confused with the books, I gave up with the books and I preferred the TV show. But yeah,
I find it so hard to read a book or a show after I've watched the show or a film, because like I read the Harry Potter books after watching all the films, and you keep looking for the bits that you recognize, and if it's something you don't recognize, it's a little bit, it throws you out and it confuses you a little bit. So yeah. And Game of Thrones, it's such an in-depth book. So much more there that you need to kind of keep you have your wits about you when you're reading it. And as I've probably proven a couple of times already tonight, I've very rarely got all my wits about me to be reading that kind of book. I did read all the Lord of the Rings though. That was heavy going.
Yeah, well, I've watched a lot of Lord of the Rings. My kids were quite dedicated to Lord of the Rings. So if you were a mad Lord of the Rings fan, Iain, I could have been there with the chat, but unfortunately,
I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so that
wait,
I can
what?
work with as well.
Why are we wasting so much time talking about aliens?
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings, the book is amazing. That's one where the book is actually actually the films are close to the book, but they're so good.
What I
the
love
Hobbit
is that
films were
J.R.
terrible.
Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were like best pals at university as well. So my favorite book as a kid was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and that whole Narnia series. But they were best pals, J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, which I find very, very cool. These guys are sitting in the pub creating these amazing stories, like fantasy stories, which is...
Did you watch the film? There's a film about Tolkien, wasn't there?
I haven't seen that, no.
About how he invented the language, the Elven language and that.
The Elven language?
Yeah.
That's cool.
To go down a kind of pop culture route, I've not watched the Lord of the Rings series that they have on Amazon. I haven't touched it.
The Rings of Power.
Yeah, I love the films, but for some reason they just never caught my attention. I've not.
Yeah, I watched the first season, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite cool. I started watching the second one. I haven't kind of grasped it yet. I need to get back into it. But no, I enjoyed the first season. It's good. It's worth a watch.
Yeah, it's one. I need to go back and give it a go. Just not tried it.
Yeah. So we've got Charlie who's watching at home. Yeah. She likes the Rings of Power. She's saying hello. She's joined us late. And her cat is named after Jon Snow's direwolf.
Ghost. It's Ghost, isn't it? The direwolf's called Ghost. That's a fantastic... I love that so much. So my weird claim to fame, almost. You know, Jon Snow's wife was Ygritte, Rose Leslie.
Yeah.
So twice, I know this is ridiculous because it's not, like I can't see it, but I've been mistaken for her twice. Which I know, I look nothing like her, but I was doing a tasting for you, Mike, at Mary Cooter one night, and I was setting up, you know, that beautiful room they have with the big fireplace, like the sort of
the
the main room. Yeah. So I was setting up in there, and I was ready a bit early, not like me at all. So I was literally just sat in an armchair next to this roaring fire, surrounded by whiskey. And this couple had been sitting in the room at the time, and I'd just been kind of quietly getting ready around about them. No, sorry. No, I'm talking shit. I'd got ready and they came in. So they came in with their whiskies and they sat down in the back of the room. And I was kind of just sat there waiting for these people to come through. They had the piper organised. So it was like an American group of men who had their 18-year-old sons, or their 21-year-old sons, and they were taking them on a grand tour of Scotland to do golf and whiskey. And they were being piped in. Fun night. Anyway, I was waiting for this to all kick off. So I just sat there and I could hear this couple whispering. And like the lady's like, it is her. And her husband's like, it's not, leave her alone. She's like, no, it's her. I'm going to speak to her. And I was like, I think they're talking about me. But I thought it was maybe something to do with the whiskey. So I was like, just kind of sat there. And she was like, I'm going over. He's like, leave her alone. She's like, no, I'm going over. So this lady stood up. She's like, excuse me. I was like, yeah. And I thought they were going to ask if they could be part of the tasting or something. She's like, are you her off of, like off of Game of Thrones? And I was like, who? She's like, the one that married Jon Snow? I was like, Rose Leslie. She's like, yeah, because she's from here, right? I'm like, she is, but no, I'm not. That's not me. And then about 4 weeks later, I did a tasting again for you, Mike, at where's Rose's dad's castle that he lost? No, the other one, Lickley Head.
Lickley Head, yeah.
You
I
lost
was there
it.
doing it's still there. He didn't lose it.
Well, he lost it. He lost it to the council tax battle that he took and lost. But anyway, I went to go and do a tasting at this castle, and the couple were like, oh my God, are you the girl in the picture in the hallway? I was like, what? And it was bloody Rose Leslie again, like literally 4 weeks later. So I don't know if I look like her when she was maybe about 20 years old and darker haired and haggard before she became a Hollywood actress. But how works that? Within the space of 4 or 6 weeks, I was mistook for her twice. Anyway, that's my weird claim to fame.
Our UK sales director is the spitting image of Martin Compston.
No way.
Absolute spitting image. It's like it's now become a thing that if he ever attends a festival or a whiskey show or anything, that we play the game of how long before somebody comes up and says, "Do you know you look like Martin Compston?" and he's that pissed off with it that there was a time where he was at Glasgow Central Station, and somebody came up to him and says, "You're Martin Compston," and he just ran with it. And he's got somebody has a selfie with him. They have left thinking that they have a selfie with Martin Compston, but no, it's our sales director.
That's hilarious.
So you should start doing that. Just run with it. Just go with it. Just say you are. Yeah, I am her.
Yeah.
So we've done quite a few tastings at Ward Hill Castle, which is the Leslie where the family are. So it's Rose's brother Will who runs the castle, and I was away to do a tasting, and behind me this kind of old Land Rover was trundling along on the road up to the castle, and I was in the shop bus. Got out, opened the boot, picked up this tray full of glasses, turned round, and this was Rose and Kit getting out of the car. And I was like a handful, and all I could say was, "You all right?" And they were like, "Yeah, thanks." And then walked away, and I'm like, "Fucking idiot!" That's all I could say. But even better, went in, set up tastings. It was a group of Italians. It was an Italian family that hired the castle. So the castle was kind of the front bit, and then at the back they had the family quarters. So that's where the family lived, funnily enough. But two of the Italian guys came back from shopping just as I was setting up and walked straight into their kitchen, as in the family kitchen. They thought it was a back door to the castle. Walked in, and they're like, here was Kit Harington with his marigolds on, washing the dishes. Rose and her mum are sitting having a cup of tea, and they're like, "Let's sit down now, have a cup of tea with us." And they were like, with their Tesco bags of shopping. It was like, oh my God, they're like,
That's-
no, not to go. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Can I just say, Charlie, who has said, I can see that you resemble her. You're equally beautiful. You are beautiful. That is a lovely thing to say. So I'm going to take that and run with it. Thank you very much.
There you go. Ian Bruce has also called you a wildling, so.
Only because I don't know if that's a complimentary. It's probably just a bit mental, but like, let's go with that.
What he said is, "Are you the wildling?" Could sound a bit cheeky if you're not sure of the show.
Well, yeah, that's very true. But no, if we'd done Game of Thrones from the start, that would be fun. Allotting like the different houses to different whiskey brands. I mean, I know Diageo did that already, but if we did non-Diageo brands, that would be fun. Because obviously, you know, Jon Snow, House Stark, they're the north. I mean, that's got to be Glengarry and above. So, like, I don't know. It'd probably be us, to be honest. The one true king. That's a lot of fun. We should maybe do that one night as well. Oh my God, there's so many things we need to allot.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody's done the Harry Potter houses.
Probably because it's a kids.
I was about to say too children orientated.
Yeah. And nobody wants to be Slytherin. Like, who would be the Slytherin of the whiskey world? Nobody wants to be that.
Well, that would be Diageo, wouldn't it?
The first one that came to my head was Talisker, and I just thought,
why?
I don't know,
don't get that one.
No, it just came in my head. I don't know why.
I don't know. Like, no, I can't allot. I can't give opinions about that anyway. It's interesting.
We don't stock Talisker at the moment, so I can say. I don't know why. It just came into my head. I've got nothing against Talisker at all. It's pretty good. The port tree is, I think, one of the best port cask finishes out there.
It's yum. It is. It's good.
Talisker 18 was always a classic. It was always a great product.
Yeah. Are they not building a new visitor centre? Are they not like demolishing the old one and rebuilding it? Or is that not happening? Was that not in the news a while ago?
It was. Was it Talisker? Yeah, it was.
I think it was Talisker.
They were moving site or something. There was something big about the site being moved to
I think they outgrew.
Did they not controversially? Was the headline not a bit misleading about Diageo demolishing one of the oldest distilleries or something? There was something really.
Yeah, I think they just put in planning permission for it or something. I don't know what stage it was at, but.
Oh, well, so we have Places with Spirit who are on, who are, thank you for watching, because this is next week's guests, but these guys are distillery architects, and they are obviously in the know, so they're saying in for planning. So they're maybe building a new distillery or planning for a new distillery, knocking it partially down. Okay, that's good to know. I'm glad I didn't just make up nonsense there.
Well, hopefully we'll find out more next week if they're our guest. We can. Also,
Places of Spirit, if you've only just tuned in while we're talking about Game of Thrones, like this is not how the chat usually goes.
We do normally talk about whiskey as well.
Not one of yours. I know you've got some exciting distilleries you guys have been part of, which I'm super excited about chatting to you guys next week about. But yeah, please don't judge all of the chat on what you've just seen in the last 5 minutes, because we actually have spoken to Iain quite significantly about his time in the industry. So
we've touched on whiskey briefly, but generally pop culture has been the focus.
We've talked Harrison Ford, we've talked Star Wars, Blade Runner, Oasis.
They got a mention. It has been quite a popular culture chat. Like, if this was a pub quiz, we would definitely be covering all topics tonight. Football got mentioned briefly, but I'm glad it didn't take too much root, because I would have been tapping out pretty quick there.
I just realised we've been on for 2 hours 45. That's such.
I know it's probably a good place to say that, Iain. Thank you very much for your chat tonight. We really don't want to keep you up all night.
Yeah,
You
like
did say you got a day off tomorrow.
having a blast. I'm enjoying it, so it's
Good.
not a
Well,
problem.
thank you so much.
This has flown by, so it
It has.
hasn't felt like 2 hours 45.
I think
really
that's the
hasn't,
good
has
thing about the Blether. Like, it never really, because people will look back and say, "Oh my gosh!" Like, if I ask a guest to appear, like, "Oh my god, you spoke to that person for like 2.5 hours," it never feels like 2.5 hours because it always just seems to go past really fast. I think that's a good sign of good conversation. That
Yes.
2 hours pass and you don't even realize it's been that length of time. So it's always a credit to our guests as well, though, because you've obviously had some fab things to talk about.
100%. Yeah.
And you are
Well,
obviously a legend of the industry. So we're so grateful that you've given us your time. 20 years working for one brand. You are a total legend of the industry. It's been an honor to have you on.
It's very kind of you. Mike dropped me a message and said that I think it was the email you sent. It's just like being in a pub, chatting to friends. And I was like, I'm good with that as long as it's not a Weatherspoons where the toilets are 6 miles away. And it works for me.
Yeah. All you need is an empty bottle at your feet and you'll be fine.
We're fine.
I can't do that. I can't do No, it's been so much fun. Sorry,
I was about to say, yeah, no, your chat's probably better. I was about to say, as I'm getting older, I generally like a pub where the toilet's slightly closer than a Weatherspoons.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm a woman in her 40s who has 3 kids. I need the toilet as close as possible. There you
it's
go.
necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you in your 40s now, Kat?
No, I'm not. This is my 40th year. This is my year of
I thought you hadn't quite. Yeah, I didn't quite hit that yet.
No. So
I think Scott Matheson on YouTube has summed up tonight. He says, "Great Blether tonight. Definitely need to look at more Glen Moray."
Yes.
If we've got half the guys who are watching tonight reaching for a Glen Moray, I think we've done our wee bit. It's a fantastic whiskey.
Yeah.
And when I get around the distillery, I'll be able to say that it's a great distillery as well. From the outside, it's brilliant.
It's an awesome distillery. If you guys haven't done the tour, definitely go and do it. If you want to see large scale production, but also old school like vibe, like it's like a fantastic mashup of the two things. It's one of my favorite tours I've done, actually. I know I did it with Connelly, but it was awesome to see the site and what you guys are doing. And the visitor center is awesome. Like, there's a cafe, really cool merch, like affordable single cask whiskeys. Like, yeah, go and do it if you haven't done it. And I'm going to book on to your Spirit of Speyside event as soon as I get the chance to do that.
Yeah, come and see us. Everybody's welcome. I'm really proud of what we've built up at the distillery in terms of a visitor experience. I think we punch above our weight, given that we've got really just 2 spaces. So yeah, everybody's welcome. You both are very welcome, and everybody who's joined the tasting tonight, if you've not been, or even if you have, come back and see us. Yeah.
We will be back. We'll do a whiskey shop excursion back up and see you guys as well. 100%. And you're welcome back on anytime, Iain. Anytime you've got anything you want to talk about, Glen, money-wise, you are always a welcome guest on the Blether. So give us a shout. You know how to find us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a blast. This has been great. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. We've hit 2 hours 47. It hasn't felt like that for me. Hope it's been the same for everybody listening.
100%.
Well, a lot of them are still listening, which is a great sign.
Yep.
So, Phil, thank you very much for your comment there. Thanks for a great chat. Place with Spirit, I can't wait to chat with you next week. They're actually sitting with Phoenix Rising on the go with their Blether. Have a look back, go back to the start, and watch if you're coming in late. Charlie as well, Chamonix, if you got nothing else better to do, go back to the start and watch again. Guys, if you've got any questions from the Blether, fire them into the comments, because we do kind of watch back and see, and if we can answer, we'll do our best to do that as well. But that's us. That's us at the end of the session, as it were. Almost 3 hours of whiskey and nonsense.
Predominantly whiskey.
It's been so much fun. And Kat, for next week, Places with Spirit is the name that we have on YouTube. Can you tell us a little bit more about them just before we
So they
shut down?
are the Organic Architects guys, and please write in the comments if I've got this wrong, but they are sort of alcohol-based architects. So they have worked on Nicnean, Ardnamurchan, Lindors, and Benbecula, to name but a few, I think, distilleries. And I think they've got sort of sustainability kind of concepts in mind when they're creating these new distilleries too. Because I know I've kind of spoken to the guys a little bit about what we've been doing at Glenkeely also. I'm really excited about this. I think there's going to be some really fun, geeky chat there. Nailed it. Awesome. So I found these guys accidentally just through the fact that I'm the biggest geek in the world, and realized that they had their own YouTube channel. So I started watching some of their videos and started stalking them and insisted they come on the Blether. So excited to have you guys on. So that's who we've got next week. So yeah, geek out next week with these guys.
It sounds like it's going to be a proper geek fest. And guys, if you're into Star Wars, Games of Thrones, or anything, let us know. It's always nice to diverse. So let us know what your favorite band is, and we'll try and do some chat on that. And if you know the difference between a catapult and a trebuchet, even better.
Or what house would Game of Thrones house would a distillery be? Let's get some chat from that going as well. We'll get some stuff up in the socials maybe.
Cheers, Iain, again. It's been a blast. Thank you to everyone who's watching, and we'll say good night. Cheers.
Slange.